floor will please vacate the chamber at this time. Members and guests in the galleries will please rise as we are led in prayer this morning by the gentleman from the 34th Doggett Boggs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let's all join our hearts and our minds and go to the Lord in prayer. Our Father and our God, we thank you for this day that you've given us. We thank you for all your many blessings because, Lord, we know all good things come from you. Lord, we pray for our state. We pray for our nation. We pray for the citizens that we represent. And we pray, Lord, that in this body today, everything that's said and done will honor and glorify you, will be for the best interest of the citizens of West Virginia. Bless our constituents, bless the families, bless every home that's represented here, God. And we just pray with all our heart that we lift you up and honor you in all that we do. For this we ask in Christ's name, amen.
Amen. Members and guests will please remain standing as we are led in the Pledge of Allegiance today by the gentleman from the 58th, Doggett Coles.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Please join me as we honor our country.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Members and guests may be seated. Reading the Journal.
Journal of the House of Delegates, Charleston, Monday, February 18th, 2019.
Laid in the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the further reading of the Journal be dispensed with and that it be approved as having been read.
Laid in the 49th, action unanimous consent that further reading of the Journal be dispensed with and it be approved as having been read. Are there objections? Chair hears no objections, so ordered. Introduction to guests. Introduction to guests. Gentleman from the 58th, Doggett Coles.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Today, ladies and gentlemen, I have a crew of Morgan County 4-H'ers who have come to the Capitol all the way from the Eastern Panhandle. Today we have Benjamin Akers, if he'll stand. If these pages will stand when I call their name. Cardin Beal, Sierra Hose, Tessa Mendez, Lily Morgan, Cameron Davis, Malachi Michael, Caitlin Mincer, Clara Steiner, and Alexander Wakeland. They are here from the long trip from the Panhandle, and in the gallery are their chaperones, if they could stand as well. If the House will please make our guests welcome. Thank you.
Gentleman from the 10th, Doggett Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today we also have pages here from Wood County. They come from Blennerhassett Elementary. If they'd stand, please, we have Gabe Van Fossen, Ava Van Fossen, Zane Van Fossen, Patrick Arnold, and Logan Arnold. And they're accompanied today by their parents, Samantha Van Dyke, Scott and Susan Van Fossen, and Craig and Amy Arnold. If they'd stand, please, and the House make them feel welcome.
Gentleman of 17th, Doggett Rohrbach.
Speaker, today I rise to make two announcements. First of all, I would like to recognize my sister, Karen Canute, and her husband, David Canute, in the gallery. If they'd stand and the House would make them welcome. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, on behalf of Delegate Ellington, Staggers, Summers, and myself, we would like to recognize some very special nurses that are here today. I'd like to start out by saying 1 in 43 West Virginians is a nurse. Nurses make a significant contribution of time, energy, heart, and care towards the healing of our residents who are ill and suffering. They're powerful advocates for the health and well-being of all West Virginians, providing education, screening, nursing, intervention, evaluation, and research to improve the health of West Virginia residents throughout their lifespan from pre-birth to the end of life. Nurses meet the health care needs of West Virginians not only in hospitals and long-term care facilities, but in their homes, school, work, church, community health centers, on the phone, and on the internet. With that in mind, I'd like to have the House acknowledge 3 people that are here today, and if they would stand and be recognized. John Casto, Jody Biller, and Tony DiCiacchio. And if the House would make them welcome.
The gentleman from the 25th, Douglas Painter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to welcome from the 25th District in Wyoming County and Mercer and McDowell, all of the teachers and service personnel that have come up today. And let's give them all a big house welcome.
The gentleman from the 1st, Douglas McGeehan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. From all the way up in the northern panhandle, from the Fighting 1st District, we have plenty of school teachers, some good educators, and some school personnel in the balcony right now. Not sure which one, but if you're from the northern panhandle in Brooke County or Hancock County, why don't you go ahead and stand up. The House, please make these folks welcome that drove the 4 hours to get here.
The gentleman from the 60th, Douglas Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't know if they were able to get into the galleries, but we've got some friends here from Wolfpack, which is an Article 5 proposal campaign, from the U.S. Congressional Term Limits campaign, and also from the Convention of States. And I'd like to specifically mention U.S. Senator Tom Coburn. Please make them feel welcome.
Gentleman from the 11th, Douglas Atkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to recognize teachers from Roane County that are here today, some in the North Gallery, and I'm not sure where else, but if they would, please stand, and the House make them welcome.
Gentleman 21st, Douglas Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of myself and Delegate Brown, I'd like to welcome friends and co-workers, Mingo County teachers. If you're in the House, please stand up. Thanks for some over here. And I have one more. I have one of my first cousins is here. He's a teacher in Kanawha County. Alex Hunt, if you would please stand up. Friends, make him welcome.
The gentleman 23rd, Douglas Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a couple of announcements. First off, on behalf of myself, gentlemen from the 22nd and the 24th, if our educators that are here in the various galleries from Boone, Lincoln, and Logan County would please stand and be recognized in the House, make them feel welcome. And Mr. Speaker, over the last 25 months, the Secretary of State's office has been working closely with our 55 county clerks to make sure that every eligible West Virginia resident is registered to vote. Working with political party leaders and civic engagement groups like Inspire West Virginia, more than 107,000 new voters have been registered in 2 years. Notably, Mr. Speaker, more than 33,000 of those newly registered voters are high school students. That's why we'd like to honor students today from my part of the state and other parts of the state who were responsible for leading registration drives and achieved at least 85% registration of eligible students, earning their school the Jennings Randolph Award. For their achievement, they've been designated Honorary Secretary of State for today. These students are in the West Gallery, and they are accompanied by Secretary of State Mac Warner. I would ask them to please stand as I call their name for the House to give them a warm welcome. First, these are a little special to me since they're former soccer players that I had the opportunity to coach. From Scott High School in Boone County, Amelia Setzer and Christian Prince. From Independence High School in Raleigh County, Nia Maddox and Jack Gibson. And from Mount View High School in McDowell County, Nora Brown and Adam Greigel. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the House please make them feel welcome?
The lady from 32nd, Douglas Staggers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know I've got some wonderful teachers here from Fayette County. I'd love if they're up there in the gallery to stand up and let's give them a big hand.
The gentleman from the 43rd, Douglas Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of my colleague from the 43rd, I would like to introduce some people that came all the way down from Randolph County today. If you guys would please stand when I call your names. We have Christy Skidmore, Christy Phillips, Adrian Sherrill, Karen Balducci, Shelley Berta, Tom Diddy, and if anyone else is also here from Randolph or Pocahontas counties, teachers and service personnel, thank you guys for coming down. Thank you.
The gentleman 34th, Doggett Boggs.
Thank you again, Mr. Speaker. Very happy today to have, and whether they made it into the gallery, but I know they're outside or in the gallery somewhere, we have a host of educators, teachers, service personnel from Braxton and Gilmer counties. If you're in the gallery, please stand and let the members please make you welcome.
Lady from the 65th.
Why, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was ready over here. I was like, Daryl, say lady from the 65th. From the top of the state to the southern part, from the eastern panhandle out west, I don't care what part of the state you're from. You made it here in the gallery. Thank you for standing up, for exercising your right to be here in the people's capital. Every single last one of you better stand up right now, and the House should make you feel welcome.
Gentleman from the 50th, Delegate Angelucci.
Well, Mr. Speaker, first, thank you for pronouncing my name right. It doesn't happen that often down here. In the South Gallery, I want to introduce a good friend of mine, Josh Dobbs. Please stand. He is an instructor at East Fairmont High School, teaches civics, and appreciate his dedication to our young people. And would the House please make him feel welcome?
Delegate from the 5th.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Today I know that I have constituents, teachers, service personnel, administrators here from Wetzel County. I'm not sure if they got in the galleries. They may be outside. But if they're in the galleries, I'd ask that they please stand and that the House make them welcome.
Delegate from the 48th, Delegate Miley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to introduce any Harrison County teachers that are in the galleries. I know I spoke to some this morning in my office. I don't know how many are in the gallery. There's some in the rear there. So all Harrison County teachers and school service personnel, if you're in the galleries, please rise and let the House make you feel welcome.
Gentleman from the 50th, Delegate Caputo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Appreciate that. On behalf of Delegates Longstreth, Angelucci, and myself, I've seen several educators and school service personnel in the Capitol today from Marion County. Would you please give them a round of applause? If any of you in the gallery, please stand.
Lady from the 36th, Delegate Eastep Burton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of myself and all of the Kanawha County delegates, I want to ask all the Kanawha County teachers and service personnel to please stand, and House, please make them feel welcome. Thank you, guys.
Gentleman from the 19th, Delegate Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of Delegate Thompson, Rohrback, and Lovejoy, I'd like to give a big welcome to all the Wayne County teachers, school personnel, coaches. If you would, stand up and House, give them a warm welcome.
Lady from the 4th, Dr. Zukoff.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of Delegate Canister and myself from the 4th, we'd like to welcome any teachers that are here from Marshall and Ohio County in our districts. Thank you for being here. If you could please stand up and be recognized.
Gentleman 26, Douglas Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to welcome any teachers from McDowell County, from Mercer County. I had the opportunity to take pictures with several, and a special group of teachers that were up here outside of the House Education Committee room. They invited me to sit on the floor and play cards with them. Up there they are. So I'd ask all those people to stand up and welcome to the Capitol.
Gentleman 17th, Dr. Lovejoy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to ask any teachers, service personnel, parents, or students from Cabell County to please stand and be recognized, including my new friends, Sherry and Gary Klein.
Gentleman the second, Doug Desario.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank all the teachers for being here today, but especially one 35-year unionized school teacher. I'd like to give a special welcome to our former colleague, Delegate Mike Farrow.
Gentleman 30th, Doug Bates.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I haven't been keeping count, but it looks like we have a pretty strong showing from all 55 counties. And over my left shoulder, I believe there are some professional educators from Riley County. On behalf of all 11 members of this House that represent some portion of Riley County, I'd like to welcome them here and look forward to us taking swift action today, get them back in their classrooms. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman, the 45th, Doug Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to welcome any teachers and service personnel from Upshur County today. Thank you very much for being here.
The gentleman, the 9th, Doug Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today we welcome Doctor of the Day from here in Charleston, West Virginia. Please welcome Dr. Sarah Curry.
Are there further introductions? If not, report to standing committees.
Committee on Education has had under consideration House Bill 3063 relating to a home instruction and private school tax credit. Reports the same back with amendment with recommendation that it do pass as amended, that it be referred to Committee on Finance.
Report to be received. Bill be referred to Committee on Finance.
Committee on Education has had under consideration House Bill 2551 requiring the State Board of Education to develop a method for funding student transportation costs as a standalone consideration. Reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass, that it be referred to Committee on Finance.
Report to be received. Bill be referred to Committee on Finance.
Committee on Education has had under consideration House Bill 3128, changing the recommended guidelines for full-day and half-day cooks to the minimum ratio of 1 cook for every 110 meals. Reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass, that it be referred to Committee on Finance.
Report to be received. Bill be referred to Committee on Finance.
Committee on Education has had under consideration House Bill 2719, establishing an optional bus operator and residence program for school districts. Reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass, that it be referred to Committee on Finance.
Report to be received. Bill be referred to Committee on Finance.
Committee on Education has had under consideration House Bill 3001, increasing compensation of County Board of Education members. Reports the same back with amendment with recommendation that it do pass as amended, that it be referred to Committee on Finance.
Report to be received. Bill be referred to Committee on Finance.
Committee on Education has had under consideration House Bill 2882, creating a health professional student loan programs. Reports the same back with amendment with recommendation that it do pass as amended, that it be referred to Committee on Finance.
Report to be received. Bill be referred to Committee on Finance.
Committee on Finance has had under consideration Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 13 relating to distributions from State Excess Lottery Fund, and Senate Bill 444 supplemental appropriation of DHHR divisions. Reports the same back with amendment with recommendation that each do pass as amended.
Report to be received.
Committee on Finance has had under consideration Senate Bill 442, supplementing, amending, and decreasing appropriation to Insurance Commission, and Senate Bill 443, supplemental appropriation of federal monies to DHHR divisions. Reports the same back with recommendation that each do pass.
Report to be received. Further reports to standing committees, reports to select committees, messages from the executive, messages from the Senate.
The Clerk of the Senate announces the passage by the Senate of Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 259, expanding coyote control program.
Message will be received. Bill be referred to Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources, then the Committee on Finance.
The Senate has passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 266, creating Intermediate Court of Appeals in West Virginia Appellate Review Organization Act of 2019.
Message will be received. Bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary, then the Committee on Finance.
The Senate has passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 295, relating to crimes against public justice.
Message will be received. Bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
The Senate has concurred in House amendments with further amendment and passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 451, Comprehensive Education Reform.
Message will be received. The gentleman of 50th, for what purpose does the gentleman seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I hereby move to postpone indefinitely any further action on Senate Bill 451. I ask for the right to explain my amendment. I ask for the yeas and nays, and I reserve the right to close.
So the gentleman offered an amendment or a motion to postpone indefinitely?
Motion to postpone indefinitely.
Gentleman's motion is to postpone indefinitely. The gentleman's motion is a debatable motion. The question before the House is the motion by the gentleman from the 50th that further action on committee substitute for Senate Bill 451 be postponed indefinitely. Does the gentleman wish to speak first?
I do.
Gentleman may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My motion to postpone indefinitely any further action on Senate Bill 451. I think we can see why we need to do that if we look around in these galleries, if we walk out in those halls, if we listen to the educators across this state. This is a bad bill for education. I don't see any way to clean it up. One thing I learned in my years in this legislature, you get a bad bill, you better kill it. You got to kill it as fast as you can kill it and move on to other things. These teachers are not here for a pay raise. They're here because they care about education, because they care about the children of West Virginia. 54 of 55 counties have closed school today. Our children need to get back in the classroom. Our teachers want to get back in the classroom. Mr. Speaker, we can end this strike today by voting on my motion to postpone indefinitely any further action on Senate Bill 451.
Are there further members who wish to...
Mr. Speaker.
Lady from the 49th, for what purpose does lady seek recognition?
To make a motion.
Lady may proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I move that Senate Bill 451 be taken up for immediate consideration and made a special order for 4 p.m. this afternoon. We still have some members that have asked to continue to look at the 130-page bill.
The lady's motion is to postpone the bill till 4 p.m. this afternoon and make it a special order?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman of 50th, for what purpose does the gentleman seek recognition?
My motion to postpone indefinitely, does that not take precedent?
Per the rules, a motion for definite postponement takes precedence over a motion for indefinite postponement. So the House will first have to dispose of the motion for definite postponement, which will then be back on the question of indefinite postponement.
I'm not sure I understand. So, and I'm not being difficult.
No, I understand.
So you're telling me, Mr. Speaker, that the majority leader's motion to postpone action until 4 p.m. takes precedent over my motion?
If the House would adopt the lady, yes, the chair will first respond, yes. If the House would adopt the lady's motion at 4 p.m., the gentleman's motion would still be pending before the House.
Is the gentlelady's motion debatable?
The gentlelady's motion is debatable.
Thank you.
As the maker of the motion, does the lady wish to proceed with the right of first recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have been asked by several colleagues, and I noticed that the Democrats in the Senate did this last night, where they requested additional time to look at the bill because it's 130 pages. Several people were not on the committees that had this, and they feel that it's important for them to review that, and that's why I'm asking for 4 p.m.
The gentleman, the 55th, Doggett Spinagle.
I request that this body reject the majority leader's motion. 2 weeks ago, I made a motion, which was supported by a good many folks in here to postpone indefinitely. At that time, I said we were heading towards a teacher strike and to go ahead and slaughter the pig, put the pig to death. Now, we worked 2 weeks in here. I'm not happy about it. I've spent 30 hours at public hearings, on committee meetings, on the floor for a couple days on this bill. And we sent it back over to the Senate. They ramroded through an amendment, put basically back in the same version that was sent over here. 54 counties went on strike today. Our kids are not in school. Why? This bill has 22 different bills or somewhere thereabouts sitting up in the Education Committee. Crossover day is not till next week. We know generally what this body will accept and will not accept on these individual bills. Why are we keeping our schools shut down in this state? Why is this such a hard decision? Well, like a boat out at sea, the executive, he's going AWOL, our captain. The first mate, he's a pyromaniac and set the thing on fire, and we're in here looking at it and saying, should we look at the flames, or do we grab buckets of water and try to put it out? Let's put the fire out. Let's end the madness. Let's stop the strike today, get our kids back in school, reject our amendment, vote the PPI the amendment, and kill the bill indefinitely so we can get on with the people's business. Enough! Enough! Use some sense in here, guys.
The gentleman to 58th, Dr. Coles.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of the gentlelady's motion. Certainly worthy of consideration at 4 o'clock is what's coming back from the Senate. I would remind us that included in this is included in addition to the pay raise, $2,000 bonus for math teachers would be wiped out if we don't take this up at 4 o'clock. If we follow the other path, $250 for classroom supplies would be wiped out. The attendance bonus, $500 for teachers all across the state, wiped out. $24 million is in that bill. $24 million for behavioral health and counselors, direct student support. There are school aid formula changes that help my county, both my counties. There are school aid formula changes that I would suggest probably help your counties to the tune of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, especially those small rural counties with few kids. The school aid formula changes are an important part of that bill, and they would be wiped out if we follow the course suggested by my friend from the 50th. I would prefer that we follow the majority leader's motion to give this a look this afternoon and take it up again at 4 o'clock. There's also important to me in that bill, special needs students, an education savings account, possibility for special needs students and those students who have been bullied. In addition to that is a fund for innovation zones, a study for more securities in schools. Mr. Speaker, there's a lot of good parts of that bill that I fear if we overreact at this time, we're going to lose good parts of an education bill. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I stand to support the lady's motion to take this up at 4 o'clock. Thank you.
The lady from 32nd, Dr. Staggers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are people in public schools that have won national championships that have gone straight from West Virginia to Washington to win national championships. Ask my buddy from McDowell County. I'd like to know how many Democrats felt like they haven't studied the bill enough. Could I show a raise of hands of all the Democrats that would like to wait till 4 o'clock to study the bill? I'm sorry, I don't see any. Maybe they've caught up and read it by now.
The gentleman, the first, Doug McGeehan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Speaker Pro Tem yield just quickly for a question?
Gentleman does yield.
Sure. Have you had time to go through the changes the Senate made last night?
I've seen a lot of the highlights, but a little more time certainly won't hurt me.
I went through them too, and it's my understanding from the reading on their amendment to what we sent over there that now there's a provision that was inserted back in that local school boards can increase property taxes de facto without any referendum by the people in those local counties. Is that true?
No, I don't believe. I think you should take another look at that. I believe the local election to raise the regular special levy is still included. I think you should take another look at that.
I took a look, and I believe they removed that portion. Is that not accurate?
I don't believe that's accurate.
Okay. One more question. Do you think that this overall omnibus bill, by packaging several different issues and bills all into one, is constitutional and meets the single object provision?
Certainly. You know, I watched Senator Trump's comments on the Senate floor a couple weeks ago now. He made a great case. I think the Attorney General has weighed in on that topic, with the general object being education reform. It's not uncommon. It's been done before. In my time down here, we had a fairly comprehensive education reform under Governor Manchin. We had another comprehensive education reform under Governor Tomlin. So I think it is education is a big part of our budget. It's a big issue in West Virginia. So while I share your concerns about big comprehensive bills, I think it's common practice and has a single object as determined by the Attorney General and some others I've heard make the case.
But wouldn't you agree that under that legal standard, essentially we could say packaging any laws or bills potentially to become laws and all into one package, we could just call legal reform by nature of this being a legislature? So that pretty much de facto does away with the single object provision completely.
No, not at all. I think it complies with the constitutional requirement for a single object and doesn't violate it or wipe it out at all. That constitutional provision stays clearly intact and applicable today with this bill and every bill in the future.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Chair would remind all members that while the chair generally does grant considerable latitude to the members in debate on measures pending before the body, the question before the body is on the lady's motion to postpone definitely the action until 4 p.m. this afternoon, and that the consideration then be made a special order. Discussion is not in order at this time on the actual merits of the bill itself. The gentleman from the 35th, Doug Scaff.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the clarification. I want to speak directly to the lady's motion. Not only were we able to disrespect the entire teaching population, our whole education system, but we have allowed our colleagues in the Senate to disrespect us. 100 members, look at 100 members strong in here. I remember last Wednesday and Thursday, we worked for 10.5 hours on a product that we thought, if I could use an analogy from my colleague over there, a bowl of chili that had tons of ingredients in it. We worked hard to make that bowl of chili taste better. And we sent it back across there. They didn't like our ingredients. And not only did they not like our ingredients, they added more ingredients to it that we've never even seen before to make it even taste way worse than it was when it started here. The bottom line here is this. Our education committee did a fantastic job. Our speaker did a fantastic job giving this bill a chance to work the process. Directly to the lady's motion. End this madness now. Nothing is good enough that we do for the state Senate. They disrespected us. I don't know the math on this, but a compromise on charter schools, they went from 5, we went to 2. Pretty good compromise. You would assume they bring it back over, 5 minus 2, maybe 3, 4. Hell, we end up with 7. Hopefully some of our math teachers in the audience can go teach our Senate president over there basic arithmetic. They disrespected this body. I would like to vote against our majority leader's motion. Nothing in this body that we can do. They've disrespected us once. They've disrespected us twice. They don't care about our input. I'm talking about my colleagues in this House. They don't care what we say. This is an agenda item for them of disrespect of all proportions to the whole process. Put an end to this now. We have plenty of time to get back into the committee process, debate all 36 of those merits in that bill, just like we did last Tuesday and Wednesday. Let's do it again. We have time left. Let's get back to work, take the good merits of this bill. Every one of you in here knows what the good, the bad, and the ugly of that bill is. Hell, I even think my colleague here still has some amendments we didn't even get to. Let's get back to the drawing board. Quit this lack of disrespect to our whole education system. Vote no on the lady's motion, and let's get back to work. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman to 16th, Doug Mant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, or Speaker. Again, I've got to get used to this process. And the process we're going through right now with working on this bill that affects so many people has not been easy. And it's changed. And it's evolved. And the other day, just as my friend Delegate Scaff said, we came up with some things. We worked long. Maybe not as long as last year, but for me and being here, that was a long evening. We compromised. We worked things out. We felt comfortable as 100 in here what we could do and what we could tell our constituents and our counties and our teachers and the service personnel and the state workers and on and on. Just as he said, we sent it back. We sent it over there with what we felt was comfortable. And then what happens? It's sent back over here to us, and I'm not comfortable with that bill. Yesterday I did say, you know, it's got 7 in there, but the boards have control over what opens and what can happen. But you know what? After studying that and listening to it and working on it last night, right now, I can't support that. And I know there's a number of my colleagues that can't, and they'll speak for themselves later or show with the vote. Honestly, the whole process has been a negative for me. I've learned from it, but I don't like what's happened. My feeling is we should have addressed education publicly first and reformed our public education with more counselors, with smaller classrooms. You know, we had a town hall the other day in Cabell County, and it was extremely enlightening to be able to ask questions and to be able to answer some questions and learn what is important and what's not to our teachers that are in our schools. So, you know, right now, the way I feel personally, and to prolong some things, I'm not in favor of 451 at this time. I just wanted to make that clear and tell you what my thought process has been and what my experience has been in this. Thank you.
The gentleman to 16th, Doug Hornbuckle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I cannot say it any better than the gentleman from the 55th and the gentleman from the 35th. But what I will say, and I will keep it short and sweet, as the senior member of the Cabell County delegation, I am going to speak in the words of my Congress lady, to cut the bull and build a wall to keep Senate Bill 451 out of our state. Reject this motion and kill the bill. Thank you.
The gentleman, the 20th, Doug Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would echo the sentiments of my colleagues from the 55th and the 35th, but I would also remind this body last Thursday when we voted, there were many of you that stood up and begrudgingly voted for the bill we sent to the Senate. And your very words were, if this changes, one period, I'm not voting for it. Surely your values and your beliefs have not changed in 4 days. We don't need the 4 o'clock to figure out what we're going to do. I say let's get on with business and let's kill this bill. Let's move on with the people's business in the people's house. Thank you.
The gentleman, the 62nd, Doug Bibby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to stand up and talk about the people that want competition in our schools. The folks who aren't here, the folks who had to find childcare for teachers who chose to leave their jobs and come to the Capitol. That's right. Unlawfully, by the way. You can check West Virginia Code.
Delegate, the chair would remind all members, debate is in order on the lady's motion. It is not in order at this time on the substance of the bill. The gentleman is recognized to proceed on the merits of the lady's motion, but not at this time on the substance of the bill. Gentleman may continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We'll take out that bill at 4 o'clock. But I like what the Senate brought back. It put competition back in our school system. It gave parents a choice. And that's what we're looking for. That's all we want. We want time to look at the bill to see that it has the choice and the competition that the parents that are screaming out there, they want in West Virginia education. Let's get rid of the cronyism within the education system today. Let's put some competition, and let's give parents some choice, and that's what we need. We need time to study what the Senate sent to us, and we can look at that bill this afternoon at 4 o'clock. Thank you.
One or more points of order have been raised. Gentleman from the 10th, are you the raiser of one of them? Gentleman may state his point.
Mr. Speaker, you explain the position of the chair upon the motion in front of us. The gentleman is out of order.
Gentleman's been so admonished. The gentleman from the 48th, Douglas Miley.
I urge rejection of the gentlelady's motion. I think it's clear based upon those comments that were in and out of order here on the floor today so far that I think people know how they're going to vote on the bill. I don't know that another few hours is going to change your mind unless there's undue pressure from one side or the other. But unlike what happened in the Senate yesterday, because I do want to address the lady's comments that she made in her motion, that the difference between what happened over there and what we're dealing with now is they had the changes to the bill at most an hour, if that, before they were allowed to see the changes. We've had overnight. We've had over 12 hours plus 15 hours perhaps of what the changes are. So it's not quite the same, despite the latest comments about what happened over in the Senate yesterday, because I think we all in this body know how we're going to vote, even at 4 o'clock. I urge rejection of the lady's amendment to take up my friends from the 50th's motion to postpone indefinitely and choose then to decide what we're going to do with this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from the 28th, Douglas Pack. The gentleman from the 27th, Douglas Schott.
Inquiry of the chair, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman may state the inquiry.
If we come back at 4 o'clock and the vote is not to concur with the Senate, can we still ask the Senate to recede from its position and take up the bill that was overwhelmingly approved in the House?
Well, there is no such motion before the body at this time, Delegate. The question before the body at 4 o'clock, if the lady's motion is adopted, would be first the question of the gentleman's motion from the 50th, that the question be that the bill be postponed indefinitely. If that motion were to be rejected by the House, at that time, various options would be in order, one of which would be to concur with the Senate amendment, one of which would be to refuse to concur with the Senate amendment, which under the joint rules adopted by the House and Senate has the effect of sending the bill back to the Senate with the request that the bill be sent to conference.
Thank you.
The gentleman from the 36th, Douglas Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaking to the motion that's before us, I just point out that we have a take it or leave it proposition, I think, from the Senate. The only thing I know of that everybody should agree on in this debate is that this bill has taken the air out of both chambers, that we have spent all of our time on the education bill. There are lots of other bills that need to be considered. We shouldn't waste any more time. And I would point out that it is very common in my experience to see the two bodies try to be cooperative. We've not seen any of that from the Senate. We're getting back basically the Senate bill. Though there's some changes, I'm sure. But the basic fundamentals of the Senate bill they have been sent back to us, and we have it before us. And the question is, are we going to wait another day to make this decision? I think that it's a mistake to continue this debate. I think it's a mistake to try to work with the Senate on any sort of conference committee report. They've been very clear. They're going to ramrod through the committee process to produce a bill with a certain number of senators. It hasn't changed. They spent an hour on our bill. We spent, I don't know how many hours I've spent on the bill in this body. And I think that we as a body have some duty to protect the work that we do. And I think that the whole source of this is the violation of the constitutional requirement for single purpose. You know, to just say education gives you a single purpose across the board.
Gentleman from the 27th, Delegate Porterfield's raised a point of order. Gentleman may state his point.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Once again, we are discussing the bill, and that is not what is at hand. It is the motion by the majority leader to postpone this till 4 o'clock. I'm asking, as our people have been asked on that, for the same thing to be applied on both sides, and her motion be the only thing of discussion. Thank you.
Gentleman's point is well taken. Delegate, you're recognized to proceed on the lady's motion, not on the merits of the bill.
Thank you, sir. And I would say that I believe that I have been on whether we waste time between now and 4 o'clock.
Chair's ruled on the question, Delegate. You're recognized to proceed on the lady's motion, not on the merits of the bill.
In regard to the motion, and the question is whether we should waste time today on proceeding to review the Senate's bill. And I would urge the members to vote against the motion.
The gentleman from the 43rd, Douglas Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to go ahead and say that we need to oppose the Majority Leader's motion. To me, it's offensive that we're playing these games back and forth, sending it back. The teachers and the service personnel of this state are here now. We're going to tell them to come back at 4 o'clock. How long are we going to drag this out for? Kill the bill.
The gentleman, the 67th, Doyle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The reason we need to reject the lady's motion is that, as the gentleman from Kanawha said a minute ago, the decision this afternoon isn't up or down. We cannot amend whatever we have. Those of us who have read it know whether we're against it or not. I'm against it. I think we should kill it now.
The gentleman, the 50th, Doug Caputo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also rise to reject the Majority Leader's motion. I believe that we have to move forward now on this bill. I believe we need to reject this bill now. That's what ends the strike. We wait till 4 o'clock this afternoon, Madam Majority Leader, with all due respect. The counties don't know what's going on. They don't know how to proceed. The teachers don't know how to proceed. But more importantly than any of that, we don't know what we're going to be doing with the children in these schools. And to that, Mr. Speaker, is the point that should be driven home. I think, to be clear, we need to vote no on the Majority Leader's amendment. Vote red, because it will be a roll call. I can promise you that. We vote red. We reject the Majority Leader's amendment. We get back to my Majority Leader's motion. We get back to my motion to postpone this bill indefinitely, and we decide right then where the rubber meets the road. We're either going to proceed forward or we're going to kill the bill and move on with business. Let these folks get back in the classroom. Let our kids get back in the classroom and just get on with life. So oppose the Majority Leader's amendment.
The gentleman at 27th, Doug Porterfield. For what purpose does the gentleman seek recognition?
My button just must have been not knocked off. I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The gentleman, the first, Doug McGeehan.
Yeah, real briefly, I'm going to have to oppose the Majority Leader's motion, unfortunately. I know I've heard it said in here in previous debates that there was two camps, you know, some for the bill, some for the charter schools or limited or no charter schools, and, you know, some for more charter schools, and all this convoluted mess about, well, there's just a binary really camp here, opposed and against based on these, you know, ESAs and charter schools and some of these issues that are polarizing. But I think when you look at just the differences, maybe a marginal improvement to what we got now at best case on the charter school side and the ESAs, yeah, maybe a marginal improvement. Very polarizing issues. I can't understand it. It seems a little irrational to me. I think, though, there is an overarching factor that we're not considering with this bill, with this omnibus bill. And, of course, we went the route right from the beginning over in the other chamber that the ends justify the means. So if there was any consideration, first off, for the Constitution that mandates the single object provision, it was an afterthought. You see, that causes a lot of distrust when you just sort of ignore that kind of thing, and then you find some lawyers to agree. You can always find a lawyer that's going to tell you what you want to hear, by the way, okay? But let's move on. The overarching point that I think some people are missing is when we sent this bill to the Senate, the price tag was over $200 million to the base budget annually going forward.
Gentleman from the 27th may state his point.
Once again, we are speaking to the amendment, not to the bill. Thank you.
Gentleman's point is well taken. The gentleman is recognized to proceed to continue with the debate on the lady's motion.
And I think it's very important to understand the context, Mr. Speaker, for why I'm proposing to oppose the motion. So anyway, significant cost. These surpluses are not going to go on forever. It's unsustainable.
The gentleman is 60th, Douglas Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the previous question.
No other lights are pending. May the chair simply close debate. Does the lady wish to close debate?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think the gentleman from the first illustrated why we need to have a few more minutes to look at this bill. Page 8, line 41 says that the levy rate, such increase must be approved by a majority vote of the voters in the county. He clearly illustrated he's not familiar with the bill, so I think there may be others as well. The gentleman from the 35th said that we're disrespecting the process. I think we're disrespecting the process when we stop it today. What's wrong with coming back this afternoon and taking this on and casting your vote? What's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that. One of the gentlemen in the 16th said, if this comes back, I'm not voting for it. Fine, cast your vote. Are you afraid of the process? Let's carry this bill forward and let's see what happens. Why do we have to cut this process off? I urge adoption of the motion.
Roll call has been demanded. Is the demand sustained? Demand is sustained. The question before the House is the gentleman may state his point. Gentleman from the 50th, Dr. Caputo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for recognizing me. I want to be clear. We have a lot of new members. To proceed to my motion to postpone indefinitely, we must vote red on the majority leader's motion right now. Is that correct?
The gentleman is correct.
Thank you, sir.
For what purpose does the gentleman from the 66, Douglas Espinoza, seek recognition?
Point of inquiry, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman may proceed.
If it's the will of the body to continue the process, come back at 4 o'clock, thoroughly debate this measure, the underlying measure, and vote it up or down, we would vote green.
The gentleman is correct.
Thank you.
The question for the House is the motion by the lady from the 49th that the bill and the pending motion by the gentleman from the 50th be postponed until 4 p.m. and made a special order for consideration at time. At that time, we'll vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. The lady from the 51st, your vote. There we go. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 45 ayes, 53 nays, 2 members absent not voting. Less than a majority voted in the affirmative. The motion to postpone definitely is lost. The question is now on the motion to postpone indefinitely. Is there discussion on the motion? Is there discussion on the motion? The gentleman to 58th, Doug Coles.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I will reiterate there are some great things in this bill that will be lost today if we adopt the motion from my friend from the 50th. In addition to that, I think the other thing that will be lost will be the possibility for a conference committee to work out the differences with the Senate. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I would urge that we reject the gentleman's motion to postpone indefinitely.
The gentleman from the 19th, Doug Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I urge a green vote on this motion. Let's kill this bill right now and show the people of this state that we're not deaf to what they're saying. Let's vote green and kill this bill.
The gentleman from the 29th, Doug Steele.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, the Judiciary Chairman asked a question earlier that is very relevant. If there's one thing that's been clear throughout this process, it's that the people that are here respected the way that we handled it. And the people in this room respected the way that we handled it. And that was not by saying we're just not going to talk about it. Whether we like it or not, an entire body that represents the entire state of West Virginia sent a bill over here. And we would be setting a very dangerous precedent to say we're just not going to talk about it because we're afraid to take a vote. That's the wrong thing to do. The people have trusted us to debate this topic, whether we are for it, whether we are against it. And by foreclosing that process right now, we are doing nothing better than what some people have accused the Senate of doing. And that's by forcing things, by using procedural maneuvers. We should debate this topic on the merits, whether you're for it or whether you're against it, and leave this process open. The people have trusted us with this process. The overwhelming correspondence that I have received in regards to this is that we are trusted with the process. And we need to continue the process, whether you're for it or whether you're against it. And the chairman's right. The chairman's absolutely right. If you stop it right now, we can't send something back to conference. The people trust us to handle this appropriately, not kill things without talking about it, not sending a message to an entire body that does represent this state, whether we agree with them or not, that we're not going to discuss their bill. That is the wrong thing to do, and that is not how we trust the other chamber, and that is not how the other chamber trusts us. If this process is going to work, we must work it, not foreclose it and not forestall it. I urge everyone to vote against this motion.
The gentleman from the 48th, Douglas Miley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In response to the last speaker, the problem is we have discussed and debated these issues in the bill for about 11 to 12 hours last Tuesday, I believe it was, or Wednesday, whenever it was. I don't know that there's anything new in the bill that hasn't been discussed. Now, we may differ on whether we support a particular provision or not, but I don't think that lack of discussion is something that can be asserted as something that we have failed to do. I think we have discussed it ad nauseum. As I said in my earlier comments, I think people know how they feel about the bill, and I think they know how they're going to vote at 4 o'clock, just as they do now. Now, I never thought I would get up on the floor and say this, but I no longer trust the Senate's products. I just don't. I just don't. It passed the Senate by one vote. One vote. And clearly many over there, in a bipartisan effort, didn't trust the process or certainly weren't happy with the process of the Senate. So there's nothing new, I don't believe, that's going to be found out between now and 4 p.m. in terms of the issues to be debated. I think we debated them all very thoroughly last week. And I thought what we sent over to the Senate that I voted for was actually a very good product. But I think the problem is many in this chamber, not all perhaps, but many, and many outside this chamber in the public would not ever, under any circumstances on this bill at this time, trust a conference committee process. Maybe an incorrect belief on my part, but I just don't think we can take that chance of putting it in the committee or conference committee process, because there's no reason to think, in light of what happened in the Senate yesterday, that anything different will happen. So I encourage us to vote green on the gentleman from the 50th's motion to postpone action on this bill indefinitely. And if we want to make real comprehensive education reform, we can do it one issue at a time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from the 62nd, Douglas Bibby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I appreciate delegate from the 43rd. My eyesight's not too good. I appreciate your concerns. I feel, Mr. Speaker, that it would be a mistake to table this bill. We owe it not only to the people that are here in Charleston today, but also the people that are home, that are looking at what we're doing. They want an opportunity to look at this bill too. And they expect, as their representatives, that we take time and due diligence to review what the Senate sent over. Now, some people may have already had a foregone conclusion, but I think we owe it to all our citizens that we give them the respect that they deserve to give this a full look at and review of what the Senate sent over before we go and vote to table this bill indefinitely. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from the 55th, Douglas Spinagle.
Report of inquiry.
Gentleman may proceed.
If we were to take this bill up this evening and we would we would request conferencees, that bill will be sent over to the Senate sometime this evening. Is that correct?
The chair would remind all members that the motion to postpone until 4 p.m. has been rejected.
I understand, but I was following up on Delegate Schott's comments, hypothetically speaking, at 4 o'clock. If that were to occur, the bill will go over to the Senate this evening, correct?
The report would go to the Senate, yes, sir.
And let's just say, hypothetically, that the Senate would appoint conferencees. Is that correct? If they did, how long does the conference committee have to work on a bill then?
It would be when the Senate elects to take up messages from the House is entirely at the discretion of that body.
Is a couple days, though, the conference can have the bill. Is that correct?
Gentleman is correct.
Okay. Permission to speak.
Gentleman, proceed.
Vote green on this bill. No, we don't do that, do we? Vote green on the motion. We kill the bill, and you end the strike. If you don't, let's just say, hypothetically, let's take this out, what the Chairman of the Judiciary was saying, this strike's going to continue for the rest of the week. The rest of the week, with a Senate that hasn't acted in good faith, school teachers, school service personnel, parents, and most importantly, our kids are not going to be in school because of the actions we take statewide. That's PPI. Let's support my good friend from the 50th. Kill the bill, end the strike, and let's move on with the state's business.
The gentleman, the 48th, Elgin Hamrick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't really know what to say on this. And as we hear from a lot of members on the floor, I didn't really plan to speak on this motion today, but I think a majority of what we've heard and will continue to hear throughout the day, depending on this motion, is a lot of political posturing. We heard in the beginning of this debate, the members on the other side of the aisle ask us to be deliberate, take our time, go through the process. We took 3 days in education. We took a day and a half in finance. We took an entire day on the House floor to work through this bill. And now we're getting to a point, I understand that a majority of this body doesn't agree with what the Senate did, but that doesn't mean we just throw it away and stop working on the process. If theoretically, if the House comes back later, we refuse to concur with the Senate, this will go to conference committee. And also theoretically, we could come up with a product that is much closer to the version of the House bill that everybody in this body that voted for the bill the first time could vote for this time. So, for those reasons, I absolutely 100% reject or ask the members to reject the gentleman's motion and allow this process to continue working. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman, 36, Doggett Rowe.
Yes, I think the entire body is assuming that an up or down vote on this will get rid of all of the provisions in the bill and be forever gone. In fact, we have time to break up this monster bill and originate bills to take care of the problems that we think should be taken care of, one idea at a time, constitutionally and in honor of the single purpose rule. There's a lot of things in the bill that we'd like to see passed, but we can't do it if it's going to be tied up in conference for the next 3 weeks. If we kill the bill today, right now, then we'll have an opportunity to introduce bills from committees to take care of the problems we want. So instead of stopping the discussion, it actually allows us to have a fair, equal plane for discussion of the individual items that are in this bill. So I urge the members to vote to vote in favor of the motion to postpone indefinitely.
Are there members who wish to speak to the gentleman from the 50th motion before he is recognized to close debate? The gentleman from the 60th, Doggett Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This proposal to kill the bill and end the strike. Kill the bill and end the strike. We keep hearing that, right? Reminds me of something I heard in Iraq once. Had a message sent to my command post. Stay out of our area or we will kill you. Sounds like the same thing to me. Same proposal. Do what you're told or we're going to misbehave. Thank you, sir.
Are there other members who wish to speak to the gentleman's motion? The gentleman from 23rd, Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are times that the answer to a question is right in front of your face. Now, excuse me, I've sat here and listened to the political posturing. I've heard this aisle, that aisle. To be honest, it's sickening I support the gentleman's motion to postpone indefinitely. We do need to end this madness. And going back to my comments that sometimes the answer is in front of you. I had that moment. At my desk last night after watching the catastrophe that took place in the Senate, and I walked over there to see it for myself. I didn't want to see it on TV. I didn't want to see it in a summary. With all due respect to our media, I did not want to read your words. I wanted to see it myself. I appreciate you, Mr. Speaker, for your guidance and your ability to stick to the rules, because what I saw on the other side was a railroad last night. It was a train wreck. There was no respect. I've heard there's been some talk about disrespect here this morning. If you watched that last night, ladies and gentlemen of this body, you should have a new respect for where we are and the ability to have the ability that we have to do what we do. Now, getting back to my point that sometimes the answer is right in front of you. At my desk, trying to think of which way I would go, which way I would vote, I looked down at my desk and right in front of me, there's my answer. I got this gift, I think probably my first session down here. This is the Bible. The rule and guide of our lives, or at least it's supposed to be, as I understand it. Lots of volumes, lots of rules. Pretty good sized book. The West Virginia school laws annotated. Let's compare them. The Bible, our life, our schools. If we want to know what's wrong with the education system in West Virginia, look in the mirror. It's us as we try to tell the people that are the experts exactly what they're supposed to be doing. And if you don't think we're doing that, I think it was last session we even stood here and told the education system the specific classes that we wanted them to teach. Do we have to tell them to teach about civics? We did that. We are overburdening the system with rules that they simply can't follow. And now we're going to add more. We're going to create a new system, a complete new system. As I understand it from what came from the Senate, we've even got a commission that authorizes charter schools in the counties in opposition to the local Board of Education if they vote to not have that. We talk about local control, but we're going to create a new system to force this down their throats. They even took out the measure. Let's talk about a little bit of sensibility. Sometimes the gentleman from the first and I disagree on certain things, but there's some things that we agree on too. The sensibility of certain things that lawmakers cannot profit by having their own charter schools or invest in the charter schools. That is a violation of the oath that we took on this very floor, ladies and gentlemen.
Gentleman may state his point.
Is on to postpone indefinitely, not on the rules or the Bible or anything else. Let's address the motion.
Mr. Speaker, I'm trying to make a point as to why that I think that we should.
Chair will make a ruling, delegate, to the gentleman's point of order. Normally, the gentleman's point of order would be well taken, but debate on a motion to postpone indefinitely and a motion to reconsider are permitted to extend into the merits of the question to be postponed. Gentleman may continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I do appreciate my chairman. I appreciate his comments. I don't take offense to that. Our students are actually watching this as well. got letters from 5th graders at an elementary school because they researched this. Maybe better than some of the people in this chamber, of their opposition. I could go through those. I probably don't need to do that and take up more time. But I do appreciate the students from Ashford Rumble Elementary School for sending me those. They took out our school safety. They took out the school safety aspect that the gentleman from Pendleton put in there, that we all stood up for, to make our children safer, and instead put an account, an unfunded account, to try to do that. It flies in the face of what we thought was important, the safety of our students. Even though that all of a sudden that after that social media lit up that law enforcement only wanted in the schools for to arrest children, which I take offense to that as well. Trusting the process. I think we have to trust ourselves in this, not trust the other side of the hallway. And finally, Mr. Speaker, sometimes we need to listen. We need to listen to the folks that's in the chamber. We need to listen to our folks back home. And if we'll just take just a second, listen right now. Is everyone hearing the same thing I am? These are the voices of the people of the state of West Virginia outside these doors, and they're sending a very, very clear message. I support the gentleman's motion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Does the gentleman, the 48th Delegate Hamrick, seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'd just like to make maybe one more point, and I apologize for asking to be recognized a second time. I'd just say, if we're unwilling, to go forward and go to a conference committee to compromise on a piece of legislation that is one of the forefronts of the Senate's agenda, then we might as well just adjourn sine die right now and forget the rest of session. It just honestly doesn't make sense to me. We are willing, no one here is saying that we agree 100% with what the Senate's doing, what they sent us. But if we're unwilling to sit down at a table and have a conversation for at most 3 days on a piece of legislation, then we might as well just finish up the session now. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman, the 60th Delegate Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My good friend just said that, do you hear the voices of the people of West Virginia out there? I hear the voices of some people from West Virginia, a few who have a vested interest in the status quo, the existing situation. I've also heard the voices of hundreds of other people from across the state, from your districts, from across the state, who have told me that you are not listening to them because you're listening to this. They talk to me because nobody else is listening. I will tell you right now that what they want, what the people of West Virginia want, what is our duty is for us to work through this bill, do the best we can, and then give it an up or down vote once we have the finalized product. It is not to quit now before we've done our jobs. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Are there other members who wish to be recognized? The gentleman from the 8th, Delegate Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to oppose the motion from the gentleman from the 50th. This House has been through a very deliberative process. House Education Committee advanced the product to the Finance Committee. And in the Finance Committee, we got ourselves in a parliamentary position where I cast a very critical vote to afford the minority a chance to offer amendments at that point in time. I do not regret my vote. This House spent 11 plus hours on the floor deliberating this. A great investment of our time, our capital, our energy. I have heard from teachers across the state. I've heard from parents across the state. I've heard from people on all sides. In this process, having been here the years that I've been here, we can kill this bill right here on this House floor and ignore any chance for further consideration. The Speaker Pro Tem has read a long list of things that will go down that I believe will help the people of this state. I've been here and served on numerous conference committees over the years, and I've always tried to articulate and represent the position of the House in our conference committees with the Senate, and I believe a number of people in this body have similarly served on conference committees, and we sort of take our marching orders from the members of this House. And knowing that if we don't articulate the position of this House in our negotiations with the state Senate, then the product that we would bring back could be rejected. The conference committee report can be rejected and the bill fails at that time. But to extinguish all opportunity at this time to deal with the issues raised by the Senate, to deal with all of the positives in this bill that will benefit and protect the students of this state, to cut it off right here and right now, I think is ill-advised. We can come back at 4 p.m. and deal with this. If it goes to conference and the House position largely prevails, then we may well have a bill that will advance the cause of education in this state in such a way that will protect the students of this state, grant the teachers a deserved pay raise in this state, afford tax opportunities, and all of the things that are good in this bill. But to adopt the gentleman from the 50th motion at this time means we're back to ground zero and all is lost. I do not believe it is the appropriate time to go to ground zero. I believe I oppose the motion of the gentleman from the 50th. We can deal with this again at 4 p.m. today, and if it goes to conference and the conference committee can get the Senate to move largely to the previous House position, then the bill will not be lost and all of our efforts will not be lost in the process. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from the 56, Douglas Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to oppose the gentleman's motion. I was looking online there at the bill and 9 times it was amended, and I lost count at about 50 different amendments between the House and the Senate. You know, they talk about 2 things you don't want to see being made, laws and sausage. Well, part of the problem is this has been a very difficult time for everybody on both sides of this issue. And now we're getting near the end of the process, and we're saying we don't want to take a vote on the bill, we just want to quit. If we just quit every time we got to a point where it was really difficult, nothing would ever be accomplished. I don't think there's a person in this chamber or in the galleries that don't think we need to do something to improve the education outcomes in West Virginia. We may disagree on what's most important, but we do, I think, agree on that. And what we're about to do is just stop when we get near the end. And in the end, we may fail. We may prevail. We don't know what the difference that conference committee is going to come back with. It may be something that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle agree with. It may not. But we are not going to have the opportunity to see what happens if we stop the process now without taking a vote on the bill. I urge rejection of the gentleman's amendment, motion.
The gentleman from the 10th, Dr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A couple of weeks ago, we spent a lot of time in the Education Committee. We took a bill that came from the Senate that we didn't like. We worked it night after night after night. And we came up with a bill that we felt was a pretty good bill. And we sent it out and we negotiated it, and it went to the Finance Committee, and they made some changes, and we made some changes back and forth, and we came out of this chamber with a pretty good bill. I believe we did. There were things in there that I liked really well. There were some things in there that I really wasn't sure about, but that's compromise. That's compromise. We sent that bill to the Senate, and the Senate came back through and they did their work and they sent it back, and we don't like what we got back. But that's part of the process, ladies and gentlemen. That's part of the process. And the process continues. We haven't completed our work yet. We need to go through, we need to stand up, and we need to complete the process. As a committee, as an education committee, we completed our process. As a finance committee, they completed their process. Now, the next step is going to be a conference committee, and that's part of the process. And for those of you who don't like the process, I guess I understand that. But for those in the galleries, we respect your right to do your job. We want you to do your job, but please give us an opportunity to complete our job. And let us come up with something that we believe is a good product, and let's complete it. And once we get a product back, then let's see if we can get it passed. Ladies and gentlemen, I urge rejection of the gentleman's amendment, and I ask that this body continue to do our job and attempt to come up with a good product. Thank you.
The gentleman, the 27th, Doug Schott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My colleague and a friend from the 23rd raised an issue that really kind of shot over my head at one time. He indicated the students of the state are watching today, what we do. So I think one thing we ought to be asking ourselves is, what is the lesson that they will learn today if we adopt this motion? Is the lesson going to be, if you bring enough people down here and they make enough noise, we will abandon the process that has served this state, this body, for decades? That's all you need to do to get us to turn our back on what we have come to embrace as a process that ends up with the best product possible. Is that the lesson we want to teach today, or do we want to take the effort that we put into this bill for days and days, throw it away, or do we want to continue and finish what we started and teach those young people who are watching us that we're not going to be deterred from doing our job no matter how many people come down here and make noise. We're going to finish the job and turn out the best product possible. And for that reason, and for those students who are watching us, I think we need to turn down this motion, reject this motion, finish our job, and do what we're supposed to do. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman, the 44th, Doug Hannah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to stand today and oppose the gentleman's amendment. Although I mean, not his amendment, but his motion. Although I can see where he's coming from with the frustration. We've had so many opportunities to postpone this, but we have to trust the process. I mean, we didn't get elected to come down here and run from our problems. You know, I said in Education Committee earlier today that if you go back a year ago today, I was sitting in the classroom. And man, I wish I could have sat in the middle of my math tests and asked and make a motion to postpone it indefinitely. But I'm not allowed to run from the problems. I mean, really, that's what we're doing. We're running from the problems, and that's not why we were elected. I don't agree with the bill how it stands right now. I'm with you guys. It's ridiculous. I think Mitch should learn how to do math too. But, I mean, really, we have an opportunity to make this good. I sat here and I tried to amend the school aid formula from 1,400 to 1,500. That's something this bill I'm passionate about. And I know that's something we'll never get passed if it's not in this bill. There are a lot of bad parts of this bill, but there are so many good parts too. And I may not be passionate about the one that they sent over to us, but I'm passionate about parts of this bill, and I really think we should respect the process. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman is 66, Douglas Espinoza.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd also rise in opposition to the gentleman's motion. You know, here we are on the 42nd day of the 60-day session. Some have suggested that, you know, let's just throw in the towel, let's defeat this bill, and miraculously these various provisions are still going to happen. And I'd suggest at this point in the process, few, if any, of those provisions will ever happen this session. I think back to students in my district, and I appreciate my colleague from the 27th really bringing it back to what this means for our students. You know, sadly, we have an incredible percentage of our math teachers that are teaching outside of their field of certification. This bill includes the $2,000 bonus for certified math teachers. I look at the provision that includes more flexibility for county salary supplements. I know in the Eastern Panhandle that I represent, we struggle daily, to attract and retain highly qualified teachers. Having the additional resources available to attract highly qualified teachers and retain our highly qualified teachers, again, that's in this legislation. We adopt the gentleman's motion, that's gone as well. The $250 tax credit for our teachers, and we know that they on a daily basis, probably far exceed that amount, but that's just one way that we can show our educators that we respect the fact that they are digging into their own pockets to assist our children. That provision's gone as well. I hear frequently when I talk to educators and parents alike and my colleagues in this chamber the need for additional school support personnel in our classrooms, guidance counselors, those folks that can assist our students who we know are struggling with things that many of us never had to struggle with when we were their age. $24 million for additional student support personnel. Mr. Speaker, last year when we were facing the deliberations over the employee pay raise, I was appointed to the conference committee, and my colleague from the 27th may recall that he wished me well in the deliberations, and I confided in my colleague. I was like, I'm going to do my very best, but I'll be very surprised if we ever come to an agreement with the Senate. We seem so far apart. How we come out of that with agreement, I just don't know. And I appreciate the reassurance from my colleague from the 27th. He said, hey, never give up, work the process, and hopefully we will be able to bridge that gap. And you'll recall we ended up being able to enact the largest aggregate pay raise in our state's history. So again, I would join with those who would say, let's not throw in the towel at this point. While there certainly remain a few contentious points, you look at where we started with charter schools, the Senate was unlimited. Here we are now, and their latest proposal is 7. Certainly we could bridge that gap even further. Educational savings accounts, again, initially I believe were open to all students. This is a very limited provision. Certainly we can sit down with our Senate colleagues and bridge that small gap that remains and retain all of these critical provisions which I am convinced will help our students across West Virginia. I'd urge rejection of the gentleman's motion.
Are there further members who wish to speak to the gentleman's motion? If not, the gentleman from the 50th, Doug Caputo, to close debate.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I promise you I will be brief. I will ask the members to please vote green on my motion to postpone indefinitely. There were a few things that were tossed around by my friends on the other side of the aisle, like, why do we want to run from this? Why do we want to throw in the towel? Why do we want to do all this right now? Well, I have a theory. If all the things in this bill was so good, they wouldn't have put them all on one of those seats on that omnibus and sent it over here. Those provisions, in my opinion, Mr. Speaker, should stand or fall on their own merit. They should not be tied and should not be held hostage to a teacher pay raise that was promised by the governor. I think this is exactly what the process should be. We're not afraid to take on a bad bill and move forward with it. We had plenty of debate on this bill. And one thing that these folks in the gallery are exercising, the right we have as an American is the right to protest our government. And that's what they're here doing today. They weren't part of this process. That's why, Mr. Speaker, this bill needs to die, and it needs to die today. We had outside interests come in here and have unlimited time in committee, in the Senate, in the House. People we never heard of. But when these folks come down to a public hearing, they got 85 seconds. That's what they got. We represent them. We don't represent the out-of-state interests that come in here and take advantage of West Virginians. That's the process. We need to vote green. We need to vote green right now. We need to kill this bill. We need to get those folks back in the classroom, and more importantly, get our kids back in the classroom. And I'm willing to discuss each and every part of that omnibus. But it shouldn't be held hostage in a bill of that magnitude. Mr. Speaker, I'll close with that. I ask for a roll call vote, and I urge the colleagues to vote green, and let's get on with business.
For what purpose does the gentleman from the 60th, Doug Wilson, seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman may state his point.
If I want to continue doing my job as a legislator in this state, I push green. If I want to preemptively surrender, I press red.
Chair's not going to respond to that inquiry. The chair will remind all members that a yes vote on the gentleman's motion will have the net effect of killing the bill today. A no vote on the gentleman's motion will have the net effect of letting the bill continue as all Senate messages. A roll call has been demanded. Is demand sustained? Demand is sustained. The question before the House is the motion by the gentleman from the 50th that further action on committee substitute Senate Bill 451 be postponed indefinitely. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 53 ayes, 45 nays, 2 members absent not voting, a majority having voted in the affirmative. The motion to postpone indefinitely. House will be in order. The House will be in order. The galleries will be cleared. Further messages from the Senate.
The Senate has passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 489 relating to Pharmacy Audit Integrity Act.
Message be received. Bill be referred to Committee on Health and Human Resources.
Senate has passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 502 exempting sales of investment metal, bullion, and coins.
Message be received. Bill be referred to Committee on Finance.
The Senate has passed Senate Bill 545 relating to HIV testing.
Message be received. Bill be referred to the Committee on Health and Human Resources.
The Senate has passed Senate Bill 550 declaring certain claims to be moral obligations of the state.
Message be received. Bill be referred to the Committee on Finance.
The Senate has passed committee substitute for Senate Concurrent Resolution 25, United States Army Private First Class Andrew Bo Martin Harper Memorial Bridge.
Message will be received. Resolution be referred to the Committee on Technology and Infrastructure, then the Committee on Rules. Are there further messages from the Senate?
No.
Resolutions, petitions, motions, bills introduced, unfinished business. Clerk has the availability of a conference committee report. Chair recognizes the gentleman from the 27th, Doug Ellington, to explain the conference committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your conference committee on House Bill 2351 relating to the regulation of prior authorizations has met in a free and open committee meeting, and both sides decided to recede from their positions to adopt a new amendment. The new amendment cleaned up mistakes and omissions within the House amendment. Specifically, language was added to make each section consistent with the others. Each section now reads the same. Mr. Speaker, I urge adoption.
The question before the House is the adoption of the conference committee report. Are there members who wish to speak to its adoption? If not, those in favor of adoption of the conference committee report will say aye. Those opposed will say no. Ayes have it. Chair declares the conference committee report adopted. The question before the House now is on the passage of the bill. Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 88 ayes, 1 nay, 11 members absent not voting. More than a majority of those present having voted in the affirmative, chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 2351.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. Lady from the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, I move the bill take effect from its passage.
Lady from the 49th moves the bill be made effective from passage. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 91 ayes, 0 nays, 9 members absent not voting. 2/3 of those elected having voted in the affirmative. Chair declares the bill effective from passage. The clerk will please communicate the acts to the House and the Senate. Is there further unfinished business? If not, bills on third reading.
Senate Bill 377 relating to minimum wage and maximum hour standards.
Gentleman 27th, Delegate Schott to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Currently, seasonal employees of amusement parks are not exempt from overtime laws. West Virginia Code does, however, already contain numerous exceptions to the definition of employee for the purposes of minimum wage and maximum hour laws that are seasonal in nature, including legislating per diem workers and seasonal employees of commercial whitewater outfitters. What this bill does is exclude any seasonal employee of an amusement park who works for the park for less than 7 months in any calendar year from the definition of the term employee for the purposes of the maximum hours portion of the minimum wage and maximum hours law. In other words, it does not exempt these individuals from the minimum wage requirement, but from the overtime requirement, with the understanding that these folks often work concentrated periods of time over less than a year's time. And in this case, it only excludes those who work less than 7 months in any calendar year. The bill also adds the definition for amusement park. Mr. Speaker, I urge adoption or passage of the bill.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, those in favor of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 63 ayes, 32 nays, 5 members absent not voting. Majority of those elected having voted in the affirmative. Chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Senate Bill 377.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House and the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2439 relating to fire service equipment and training funds for volunteer and part volunteer fire companies.
The gentleman from the 28th, Delegate Pack, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to provide for an easier and more accurate method of volunteer fire departments' expenditure reporting by requiring volunteer fire departments to submit bank statements and check images instead of sworn statements of expenditures. If the documentation is not provided by March 31st, the fire department is subject to loss of state funds. The legislative auditor is required to notify any delinquent fire department at least twice before any funds are withheld and twice each quarter thereafter until the fire department comes into compliance. Because written reports or sworn statements are no longer required of fire departments for formula distributions and equipment and training grants, criminal penalties are removed for failure to comply. The bill provides that if a volunteer or part volunteer fire department receives state formula distributions and spends the distributions for an item, service, or purpose not authorized in that section, the amount determined to have been improperly spent will be deducted from future distributions to the VFD or part-time fire department. The bill removes redundant provisions for rulemaking regarding state grants from the Fire Service Equipment and Training Fund and places rulemaking authority with the state fire marshal, who is the person who distributes the grants from the fund. The bill additionally changes the term for an entity that receives a state grant from a person to grantee to include state spending units and local governments. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There are 98 ayes, 0 nays, 2 members absent not voting. A majority of those present having voted in the affirmative, chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2439.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, title as read by the clerk will be entering the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2542, permitting directors of county emergency phone systems to obtain mobile phone emergency lines.
The gentleman from the 56th, Douglas Howell, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to allow the director of the county or municipality emergency phone system to negotiate contracts for emergency mobile phones in the event landlines are unavailable. The director must solicit bids for mobile contracts from providers in the state and may obtain as many lines as reasonably needed for emergencies where landlines are unavailable. The contracts may be paid from funds and fees received from the Public Service Commission or fees remitted to the county. A report of the expended funds will be given to the Joint Committee on Government Organization no later than November 30th, 2020. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There are 98 ayes, 0 nays, 2 members absent not voting. A majority of those present having voted in the affirmative, chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2542.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, title as read by the clerk will be entering the title of the bill. Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I make a motion to make the bill effective July 1st, 2019.
Lady from the 49th moves that the bill be made effective July 1st, 2019. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There are 98 ayes, 0 nays, 2 members absent not voting, 2/3 of those elected having voted in the affirmative. Chair declares the bill effective July 1st, 2019. Clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2947, relating generally to telemedicine prescription practice requirements and exceptions.
The gentleman from the 27th, Douglas Ellington, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The bill permits a physician who is practicing medicine through the use of telemedicine technologies to order a Schedule II medication to a hospital inpatient for immediate administration in a hospital setting. Of note, the physician is required to be licensed in West Virginia and is also credentialed at that particular hospital. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? The lady from the 32nd, Douglas Staggers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to vote for this today, but I'd like someone to volunteer that when the unintended consequences of this overly broad bill, that they will talk to me and introduce a bill called Mad Maggie's bill that says, I told you so.
Are there other members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There are 98 ayes, 0 nays, 2 members absent not voting. Majority of those present having voted in the affirmative. Chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2947.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, title as read by the clerk will be in the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 2958, authorizing the state auditor to conduct regular financial examinations or audits of all volunteer fire companies.
The gentleman from the 28th, Douglas Pack, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to authorize the state auditor to review the finances of each volunteer fire company. Audits or financial examinations will be required to complete a review of all volunteer fire companies once every 5 years. The auditor's assessment will focus on all income of the company, regardless of the company's source of funds, assets, liabilities, and all expenditures. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage.
Question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine. The gentleman from the 6th, Douglas Kelly, your vote's not registered. Clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 98 ayes, 0 nays, 2 members absent not voting. Majority of those present having voted in the affirmative, chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 2958.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Request concurrence therein. Are there further bills on third reading? Bills on second reading?
Committee substitute for House Bill 2486, using records of criminal conviction to disqualify a person from receiving a license for a profession or occupation.
Are there amendments?
Delegate Schott moves to amend the bill. This is HFA Schott 2-19, number 1.
The gentleman 27th, Delegate Schott, to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As part of our effort to remove obstacles to employment, House Bill 2486 addresses barriers with respect to the Chapter 30 boards. The bill attempts to remove barriers by requiring criminal convictions that may disqualify an applicant from applying for certification to bear a rational nexus, in other words, a connection to the occupation that requires licensure. In addition, the bill attempts to remove consideration of what's called crimes involving moral turpitude, primarily due to the uncertainty of the definition of what moral turpitude is and to the inconsistency in its application. During our committee meeting, we had discussions regarding some potential issues with the attempt to remove that reference to moral turpitude. What we're doing with this amendment is simply attempting to further clarify that issue. And basically what we've said with the amendment is that in making these type of decisions regarding licensure, certification, or registration, determination may not rely upon the description of the crime as one of, quote, moral turpitude unless the underlying crime bears a rational nexus to the occupation requiring licensure. In other words, this is simply an attempt to further clarify the purpose of the bill. Mr. Speaker, I urge its adoption.
Question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. Are there members who wish to speak to the adoption of the amendment? If not, those in favor of the amendment will say aye. Aye. Those opposed will say no. Ayes have it. Chair declares the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced. Next bill on second reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2975, relating to imposition of sexual acts on persons incarcerated.
Are there amendments? Bill will be advanced. Are there further bills on second reading? Bills on first reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 270, streamlining process for utilities access to DOH rights of way.
Bill will be advanced. Next bill on first reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 356, requiring maps provide state and federal prosecutors information.
Bill will be advanced.
Senate Bill 358, exempting purchasing division purchases for equipment to maintain security at state facilities.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 387, relating generally to extradition.
Bill will be advanced.
Senate Bill 452, supplemental appropriation to Second Chance Driver's License Program.
Bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2515, exempting the sale and installation of mobile enhancing equipment from the sales and use tax.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2532, allowing certain donations by persons reviewing their driver's license or vehicle registration.
Bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2667, supplemental appropriation, Department of Military Affairs, Public Safety.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2854, exempting sales from the consumer sales and service tax and use tax by not-for-profit volunteer school support groups raising funds for schools.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2855, allowing rebate monies to be used for the operation and maintenance of accounting and transparency systems of the state auditor.
Bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2856, relating to administration of the operating fund of the Securities Division of the Auditor's Office.
Bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2872, authorizing law enforcement officers to assist the State Fire Marshal.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2886, establishing requirements for a Division of Motor Vehicles Office or a Division of Motor Vehicles now kiosk to be present in the county.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2907, requiring a form of a certified commitment order to the Division of Corrections and Rehabilitation.
Bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2924, permitting the West Virginia Tourism Office to decide to contract with the Division of Highways to sell advertising space on the West Virginia 511 website.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2929, authorizing the West Virginia Tourism Office to enter into an agreement with the Division of Highways to provide staff at the welcome centers.
Bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2932, transferring regulation and licensing of charitable bingo, charitable raffles, and charitable raffle boards.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2933, modifying the criminal penalties imposed on a parent, guardian, or custodian for child abuse resulting in injury.
Bill will be advanced.
House Bill Bill 2954, defining certain terms used in insurance.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2980, Mine Trespass Act.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2982, amending and updating laws relating to auctioneers.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3007, authorizing Commissioner of Agriculture to require background checks.
Bill will be advanced.
House Bill 3039, relating to court's consideration of the expression of preference by child in a certain child custody matters.
Bill will be advanced.
House Bill 3083, adding temporary work during the legislative session as exclusion to the term of employment for purposes of unemployment compensation.
Bill will be advanced.
House Bill 3093, relating to standards for factory-built homes.
Bill will be advanced. Are there further bills on first reading? Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move subject to announce that the House recess until 6 p.m. this evening.
Lady from the 49th moves that subject to announcements. The House stand in recess until 6 p.m. Are there announcements? Gentleman from the 10th, Doug Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Finance Committee will resume their morning agenda at 2 p.m. Your committee will also meet tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. to take up legislation. The agenda will be posted. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from the 41st, Doug Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Health and Human Resources Committee will meet today at 2 p.m. in room 215E. Republican members will caucus at 1:30 in the chairman's office. Agenda is posted.
Gentleman 27th, Doug Schott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on the Judiciary will reconvene and complete the posted agenda at 3 p.m. today in the committee room. Thank you.
The gentleman from the 10th, Doug Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Energy will meet today at 2 o'clock in the Judiciary Conference Room. The agenda is posted. Republican members will meet at 1:30 in the Chairman's office.
Gentleman 21st, Doug Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Education will meet tomorrow at 9 a.m. in the Education Committee room. The agenda will be posted. Also, Lucia will meet today at 5 p.m. this evening in the Senate Finance Committee room. That agenda is posted.
Gentleman 28th, Doug Pack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Government Organization will meet tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. in the House Government Organization Committee room, and the agenda is posted.
Gentleman from the 10th, Doug Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Based upon other committee commitments, the Finance Committee will wait till 3:30 today to take up legislation. Thank you.
Gentleman from the 51st, Doug Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Energy Committee Democrats will caucus today at 1:30 in Delegate Evans' office.
Lady from the 32nd, Doug Staggers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Democratic members of the Health and Human Resources will meet at 1:30 in room 230 East.
Are there further announcements? If not, the question before the House is a motion by the lady from the 49th that the House stand in recess until 6 p.m. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say no. Ayes have it. The House is in recess till 6 p.m. this evening.
Senate will please come to order. The Senate will please come to order. All those not having privileges of the floor will please vacate the chamber. And with those on the floor and our guests in the gallery, please rise as we are led in prayer this morning by Pastor Wayne Crozier of Abundant Life Ministries in Charleston, West Virginia. And then please remain standing as we are led in the pledge this morning by the senator from Marion County, Pastor Crozier.
Let us pray. Father, we come to you in the name of Jesus. And Lord, we just ask your wisdom and your guidance on this legislative branch. But Lord, we ask a special prayer over every parent, every student, every teacher, that you would take this state to where you have ordained us to be. We are looking to you, Father, for great things. And for this we pray. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Pastor. Senator from Marion County.
Would the guests in the gallery and the members on the floor please join in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Reading of the Journal.
West Virginia Legislature, Senate Journal, February 18th, 2019. The Senate met at 11:13
The senator
a.m.
from Preston County requests unanimous consent that further reading of the Journal be dispensed with and that it be approved as having been read. Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered. Introduction of guests. On behalf of the Senate, it is my pleasure to welcome our honorary pages for the day. Some are in the back and many are in the front, but please stand as your name is called and be recognized. As guest of the junior senator from the 8th, we have Madison Petrie. As guest of the senior senator from the 8th, Aiden Badger, Chloe Carter, Chrissy Metz. And as guest of the senator from Greenbrier, Carter Brown. And as guest of the senator from Morgan County, we have Annalee Campbell, Caleb Michael, Dakota Gray, Matthew Rubik, Serenity McGowan, Sonia Hose, and Victoria Wakeland. If they would all please rise in the Senate, make them feel welcome. Thank you. You may be seated. Further introductions. The junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the Senate, it's my pleasure and yours to introduce our doctor for the day. In the rear of the chamber, we have Dr. Sarah Curry. If you wouldn't mind standing, she's one of our residents here at Charleston, and the Senate give you a warm welcome.
Further introductions. Further introductions. The senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Accompanying some of our pages today are parents of a few of them, and they're in the galleries. I'll ask them to stand. Alan Michael, Pam Barron, Liz Campbell, and then our WVU Extension agent in Morgan County, who's brought all these 4-Hers and their families to Charleston, Cindy Smalley. If they would all stand, the Senate would make them welcome.
The senior senator from the 8th.
Thank you, Mr. President. On your behalf and my junior senator behalf, we have parents here with 3 of the pages. Sarah Badger, Kim Carter, and Stephanie Metz. If they would stand, and the Senate make them welcome.
The senator from Braxton County.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's your honor, as well as the junior senator from Harrison County. We have some good friends with the AARP, Bob and Nellie Osborne and Marianne Ferris. If they'd stand up in the Senate, make them welcome.
The senator from Greenbrier County.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the senator from Monroe, I'm happy to welcome, you welcomed before, Carter from James Monroe High School. Carter's dad, Jeremy's with us. Jeremy, if you'd please stand, and the Senate would make him feel welcome.
The senior senator from the 8th.
Thank you again, Mr. President. In the gallery today, we have with us the state president of AARP, Rich Stone Street, if he would stand, and the Senate make him welcome.
Further introductions? Further introductions? Senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Also, we may have in the galleries today Lyda Shepard, who's with American Friends Service Committee, and others who may have joined her from around the state who are advocating for criminal justice reform as part of Recovery and Reentry Day. And I'd ask any who are here to stand and for the Senate to make them welcome.
Further introductions. Further introductions. Communications from the House.
The Clerk of the House announced the passage by that body of committee substitute for House Bill 2768, reducing the use of certain prescription drugs.
Message will be received and referred to Committee on Health and Human Resources.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2834, updating and modernizing the minimum spacing provisions for the drilling of horizontal deep wells.
Message will be received and referred to Committee on Energy, Industry, and Mining.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2849, establishing different classes of pharmacy technicians.
Message will be received and referred to Committee on Health and Human Resources. Further House messages?
No, sir.
Communications from the Executive?
There are none.
Reports from standing committees.
Your Committee on Natural Resources has had under consideration Senate Bill 613, requiring DNR include election of organ donation on hunting licenses, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass. Respectfully submitted, Mark R. Maynard, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Health and Human Resources has had under consideration Senate Bill 300 relating to adoption records and reports back to committee substitute for same with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass, but under the original double committee reference first be referred to the Committee on the Judiciary. Respectfully submitted, Michael J. Maroney, Chair.
Report will be received under the original double committee reference will be referred to the Committee on the Judiciary.
Your Committee on Banking and Insurance has had under consideration Senate Bill 583, creating Financial Technology Sandbox Program for testing of financial products and services, and reports back to committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on the Judiciary. Respectfully submitted, Michael T. Azinger, Chair.
Report will be received under the original double committee reference, be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
That's all I have, sir.
Reports from select committees.
There are none.
Introduction of bills.
There are none.
Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent to move back to the second order of business.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Senator may proceed. Introductions.
Thank you, Mr. President. I failed to recognize an individual in the President's Gallery that is a dear friend. She's a colleague, and there is a reason that I'm able to serve in the legislature, and that's because oftentimes after we've hit early morning ground, she's there making sure patients are taken care of. But if Stephanie Metz wouldn't mind standing, let the Senate give you a warm welcome. Sorry we missed you earlier.
Further introductions? Resolutions.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 39 by Senators Trump, Baldwin, Swope, Plymel, Stallings, Ehlenfeld, Maroney, and Rucker requesting creation of Joint Select Committee on requirements governing water quality standards.
Under the rules of the Senate, a resolution will lie over one day.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 40 by Senators Tarr, Baldwin, Jeffries, Stallings, and Swope naming the U.S. Army Corporal Roy E. Clark Memorial Bridge.
Under the rules of the Senate, a resolution will lie over one day.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 41 by Senators Lindsay, Azinger, Facemeyer, Hardesty, Ehlenfeld, Jeffries, Palumbo, Plymel, Prezioso, Romano, Stallings, Tacubo, Unger, Wolfel, Baldwin, Hamilton, and Maroney, requesting study creating paid family and medical leave insurance program.
Under the rules of the Senate, a resolution will lie over one day.
Senate Resolution 51 by Senators Trump, Wolfel, Boso, Beach, Stallings, Tacubo, Rucker, Lindsay, Baldwin, Palumbo, Jeffries, Romano, Hamilton, Plymel, Swope, Maroney, and Prezioso, designating February 19th, 2019 as Nurses Policy Day.
The Senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent of the Senate that the resolution be taken up for immediate consideration, that committee reference be dispensed with, and that the resolution be placed upon its adoption.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. The clerk will please read the resolution.
Senate Resolution 51 designating February 19th, 2019 as Nurses Policy Day at the Legislature.
Question before the Senate is adoption of the resolution. Is there discussion? The Senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think I probably speak for every member of the Senate on this question, that we realize that nurses are an indispensable part of health care, not only in West Virginia, but for the whole country, for our whole nation. And I think it's fitting and appropriate that we adopt this resolution today, recognizing their considerable contribution to the health and lives of our constituents throughout the state of West Virginia. Mr. President, I urge the adoption of this resolution.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion? Not. The question before the Senate is adoption of the resolution. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the resolution adopted. The junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate stand in brief recess for the purpose of presenting the resolution.
Junior senator from the 17th moves that the Senate stand in brief recess for the purpose of presenting this resolution. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the Senate in brief recess to present this resolution. Senate will please come to order. Senate will please come to order. Are there further resolutions?
No, sir.
Motion. Petitions.
There are none.
Unfinished business.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 36, naming the U.S. Army Corporal Corey M. Hewitt Memorial Bridge.
Resolution will be referred to Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 37, urging Bureau for Public Health designate Alzheimer's disease and other dementias as public health issue.
Resolution will be referred to Committee on Health and Human Resources.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 38, urging CSX support New River train.
The senior senator from the 5th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Request unanimous consent the resolution be taken up for immediate consideration, committee reference be dispensed with, and the resolution be placed upon its adoption.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Clerk will read the resolution.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 38, urging CSX support New River train.
Question for Senate is adoption of resolution. There's discussion. The senior senator from the 5th.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is an important issue related to the train that is always gone from Huntington to Hinton and back, and it is to see the New River Gorge in the fall. We are still talking about this, and my intention is I'd like to pass it here, but then move that it go to rules, and I wanted to explain to you what we're trying to do. We're having conversations with Amtrak, and we're having conversations with CSX, and some of their representatives will be here next week, and we wanted to at least have it as an option in the Committee on Rules, and that's why we're trying to bring this up. Thank you.
Question for the Senate is adoption of the resolution. Is there further discussion? If not, all those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the resolution adopted. Senior senator from the 5th.
Move further consideration of Senate Concurrent Resolution 38 be moved to the Committee on Rules.
The senior senator from the 5th moves that further consideration of SCR 38 be moved to the Committee on Rules. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the motion adopted. Is there further unfinished business?
No, sir.
Bills on third reading.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 29, creating 10-year tax credits for businesses locating on post-coal mine sites. Third reading of the bill.
Question for the Senate is, shall the bill pass? There's discussion. The senator from Boone County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 29 creates a 5-year tax credits for businesses on post-coal mine sites. It defines key terms. It sets out eligibility requirements for businesses to be eligible to receive the tax credit. Among these are maintaining a place of business located in the state and on the post-coal mining site with at least 10 full-time employees. The credit is equal to 50% of the capital expenditures made by the entity at the coal mine site for the first 5 years. The State Tax Division is granted rulemaking authority to effectuate the provisions of the tax credit, and I urge passage of the bill.
Is there further discussion? If not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question being 32 yeas, 0 nays, 2 absent and not voting, more than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 117 relating to incentives for consolidating local governments. Third reading of the bill.
Question for the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 117 would provide incentives for consolidation of local governments. 10 or 12 years ago, the legislature passed a bill providing for consolidations of cities and counties, and thus point, none of them have taken advantage of that opportunity. This bill would provide certain incentives for them to do that. Among the incentives for municipal consolidations would be 2 complete audits conducted by the auditor, one within the first 12 months and a second within the first 36 months of consolidation, preference for road construction projects under consideration with the Division of Highways, and a right to impose a 1% sales and use tax. For county consolidation, it would also provide the ability to impose a 1% sales and use tax, preference for road construction projects, and a 10% discount on a county's monthly regional jail bill for 10 years following consolidation. Also for metro consolidations where the city counties merge, it would provide all those incentives for those mergers as well. So I urge passage of the bill.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion? If not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question being 32 yeas, 0 nays, 2 absent not voting, more than the majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 147, shifting funding from Landfill Closure Assistance Fund to local solid waste authorities. The bill was advanced to third reading with the right to amend.
Are there amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. Senator Seipolt moved to amend the bill on page 1.
The senator from Preston County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read, and that all amendments be considered as one.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. The senator may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. To explain this amendment, it's important to understand what the bill actually does. Originally, as considered, the bill would have transferred $1 from one entity to another on the tipping fees, which are collected on solid waste landfills. This amendment simply exempts for a certain specific type of landfill. It's called a tire monofill. And those specific facilities, there are only 3 of them in the state. The purpose is to hold the ground tire materials for a period of time, and then going forward, as they have sale for it, they remove those materials from the ground and sell them and manufacture them. Basically, we are asking that the tire monofills be exempted from that tipping fee because it was never the intention to leave the materials in the ground forever. It's just sort of a holding facility. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I urge adoption of the amendment.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion? If not, the question before the Senate is adoption of the amendment as offered by the senator from Preston County. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Bill is ordered to engrossment, and the clerk will read the bill a third time.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 147, shifting funding from Landfill Closure Assistance Fund to local solid waste authorities. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senator from Preston County.
Thank you, Mr. President. The purpose of the committee substitute for Senate Bill 147 is to adjust the fees charged by the county solid waste authorities. The current law provides that county or regional solid waste authorities impose a 50-cent fee per ton on the disposal of solid waste in their county. Additionally, a DEP solid waste assessment in the fee of $3.50 per ton is assessed for disposal at the solid waste disposal facility. This bill would raise the county solid waste assessment from 50 cents to $1.50. So it's $1 per ton increase to retain the DEP solid waste assessment fee at $3.50 per ton. Mr. President, I urge passage of the bill.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion? Not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question being 32 yeas, 0 nays, 2 absent not voting, more than the majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk has a title amendment.
Senator Seipolt moved to amend the title of the bill.
Question before the Senate is adoption of the title amendment. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the title amendment adopted. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed Senate Bill 333, exempting automobiles 25 years or older from personal property taxes. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senior senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 333 exempts private passenger automobiles greater than 25 years or older from personal property taxation. I was approached by a constituent that the value of these antique cars are getting so great that some people aren't able to even afford to pay the taxes on a car that their father or their grandfather had, as well as project cars that they may be working on. in the process of restoring. So, Mr. President, I urge passage of this bill.
Is there further discussion? The senator from Harrison County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the gentleman yield?
Senator yields. Senator does yield.
Thank you, Senator. Being an owner of an antique car, I appreciate this. I heard your explanation. How much is this going to cost us?
Approximately $1.5 million.
And we're exempting them from property taxes, correct?
Yes.
I mean, and with all due respect, do we have the county? Do we talk to the counties? Are they okay with losing that revenue?
This bill has actually gone through, it was double referenced, and neither committee that I was sitting on.
Okay, I didn't get to see it either, and I was just a little surprised because, I mean, it just seems like most people would own fancy old cars, can afford the property tax, but thank you for the explanation.
Thank you.
Senator from Harrison County wishes to speak to the bill.
You know, just out of an abundance of caution, Mr. President, under Rule 43 of the Senate rules, I would ask whether I should be recused from voting on this, because I do own one of these cars, and it is rather expensive, so thank you.
Thank you. In response to your inquiry, and for those similarly situated, is my understanding that you are a member of a class and that you would be required to vote. Are there others desiring to speak or to ask for Rule 43? The senior senator from the 15th.
Same request, Mr. President.
Thank you. In response to your inquiry, it is my understanding of your situation that you are a member of a class and will be required to vote. Senator from Nicholas County.
Request, Mr. President.
Thank you. It's in response to your inquiry, you're a member of a class and will be required to vote. Senator from Brooke County.
Same, Mr. President. Thank you.
In response to your inquiry, you will be required to vote. Senator from Marion.
Same request, Mr. President.
Will be required to vote as a member of a class. Senator from Cabell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do not own any antique cars. And I don't know why in the world we would pass this. It's like, if I'm looking around the room and there are other people ready to stand up, are we giving ourselves a tax break here? I don't know why and what public policy we're promoting. I know we've had a good year. It looks like financially our state has done well this year, but once you make this cut, this is going to be each year $1.5 million, if that's the right number. I haven't seen the fiscal note, and I guess there won't be one since it's revenues to the counties, but the counties are struggling. Wherever you members of this chamber reside, their county is having a lot of problems paying their jail bill. And of course, the number one function of government is to keep its citizens safe. So we want to keep bad people, violent people in jail. So that jail bill is going to continue to go up. So why would we take money away from the people that pay our jail bill? And I know people, I challenge the ruling that if you actually are going to benefit from this, I really think that maybe you should be recused from voting if you're going to personally benefit on your taxes. But you're, as I proved yesterday, I'm not much of a constitutional expert. Thank you. I'm against the bill.
Are there other members desiring to speak to the bill? The junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also do not own one of these vehicles. However, I've had several constituents that have come asking for this. Many of these gentlemen that, and I'm sure ladies that have these antique cars are retirees on very fixed incomes, but they are very, very passionate about their vehicle, that they keep pristine. Most of these property taxes are really meant to take part in the repairs of the roads, and these vehicles really aren't on except for occasional going to a car show or something like that. And again, the individuals that spoke to me, that is their one pride, joy, hobby. They are elderly, they are on very fixed incomes, and they are the ones that have requested this, constituents of mine. I just want to pass that along.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion, I'll recognize the senior senator from the 6th to close debate.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Senior senator from the 6th to close debate.
Thank you, Mr. President. In the long run, the $1.5 million that is lost will be minor compared to people having to sell their cars that will go to some other state because they can't afford them. Many cars that were for those of you that don't know, many cars that were worth $2,500 a few years ago are worth $100,000 now, and we have to pay personal property tax on a $100,000 car that you have in your garage that you just drive from time to time that maybe your dad or grandfather bought that's special to you. Having to sell that because of the property tax you have to pay on it, that just feels like not fair, and this is just another tool in the toolbox to make people want to live and stay in West Virginia. Thank you, Mr. President.
Question for the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? So the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question there being 19 yeas, 13 nays, 2 absent not voting, more than the majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill be made effective July 1, 2019. Request unanimous. Move the bill.
The senator from Cabell seeks recognition.
Speak to the motion.
The senator from Cabell is recognized to speak to the motion.
I speak in opposition to the motion. Now, I did just learn that this is part of what they call the struggle to stay in West Virginia. People moving out of state because they have to sell off these cars. But I think if we're going to do it, it should at least be give people a year. At least let's have one more year of these taxes being collected. So I would ask that it be effective July 1st of 2020, so I oppose the motion.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion. Senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I speak in favor, I rise in favor of the motion to set the effective date at July 1st. Under the Constitution, if we don't set July 1st as the effective date, it will become effective 90 days from passage, which would be March, April, May. So the bill would actually probably be effective for this tax year, but I think by doing it for July 1st, it would relate to assessment date July 1st this year for the 2020 tax bill. I urge adoption of the effective date motion.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion? Not all those in favor of the junior senator from the 17th's motion to make the bill effective July 1, 2019 will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? So the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question being 31 yeas, 1 nay, 2 absent and not voting, more than 2/3 of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective July 1, 2019. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed Senate Bill 617 relating to method of payment to Municipal Pension Security Fund. Third reading of the bill.
The question for the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senator from Wood County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 617 relating to the method of payment of municipal contributions to municipalities' pension trust funds. The purpose of SB 617 is to allow municipalities the discretion to prepay required payments into their pension trust funds. Currently, municipalities are required to make a 1/12 payment on a monthly basis. This bill simply lets municipalities make their payments in a manner that best fits their needs. Mr. President, I urge passage of the bill.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion? Not all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? So the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question being 32 yeas, 0 nays, 2 absent not voting, more than the majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The clerk has a title amendment.
Senator Azinger moved to amend the title of the bill.
Question for the Senate is adoption of the title amendment. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the title amendment adopted. The junior senator from the 17th. Oh, excuse me. Further bills on third reading.
Communicate it to the House.
Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed Senate Bill 618 relating to effect on levy rate when appraisal results in tax increase. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? Senior Senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 618 allows for current law that provides that if the annual appraisal of property causes an increase of 1% or more in the total projected property tax, the levy rate is to be proportionally reduced so that there is produced no more than 101% of the previous year's projected property tax revenues. This bill would modify that appraisal increase to 10% or more in total projected property tax and then allow the levy rate to be reduced so that there is produced no more than 110% of the previous year's projected property tax revenues. This will allow counties to account for rapid increases in growth, which brings strains on those counties' infrastructure due to the loss of revenue from the reduction of the levy rate, potentially lowering the amount of property taxes produced. Mr. President, I urge passage.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion? Not. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question being 16 yeas, 16 nays, 2 absent and not voting, less than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill rejected. Are there further bills on third reading?
No, sir.
Bills on second reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 310, establishing certain requirements for dental insurance. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not. The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 326, reorganizing state agencies involved in emergency and disaster planning.
Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate Bill 326 be moved to the Committee on Rules.
Junior Senator from the 17th moves that Senate Bill 326 be referred to the Committee on Rules. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the motion adopted.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 344 relating to operation of state-owned farms. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not. The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 360 relating to third-party litigation financing. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not. The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 512 regulating pawnbrokers. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. Senator Weld moved to amend the bill.
The Senator from Brooke County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Senator may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. My amendment came to me after having discussion with a couple of pawnbrokers this past week in my office. It is to put language back into the code that is currently there. Currently it is stricken out on page 2 of the bill. And the language that is stricken out regards to maintaining records or reports of transactions. And the transactions that were originally stricken out were refinance, pawn transactions, or merchandise bought for a manufacturer or wholesaler with an established place of business. My amendment will put that language back in. What a refinance pawn transaction is that if someone comes in, we'll say they pawn a guitar for $25, and then they could pick it up for $30 within 30 days. If they come back in on day 28, but they don't have the $30, they can give the pawnbroker another $5 to hold it for another 30 days. So they already have the record of the transaction from the initial transaction, so this just would eliminate kind of a double requirement on them. The second part of it is just items that they buy from a wholesaler or a manufacturer that have nothing to do with actually pawning an item. So I urge adoption of the amendment.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion? Not. The question for the Senate is adoption of the amendment as offered by the Senator from Brooke. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not. The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Senate Bill 519 requiring county emergency dispatchers complete course for telephonic cardiopulmonary resuscitation. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
If not, the bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 553 relating to federal funds for land grant institutions. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
If not, the bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Senate Bill 587 relating to PEI reimbursement of air ambulance providers. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
If not, the bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 601 relating to mandatory supervision of adult inmates. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
If not, the bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Senate Bill 635 relating generally to coal mining activities.
Are there amendments to the bill? The senator from Tucker County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill retain its place on the schedule and be moved.
Senator from Tucker County requests unanimous consent that the bill lie over one day, retaining its place on the calendar. Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered.
Senate Bill 636, authorizing legislative rules for Higher Education Policy Commission. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not, the bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 2324, authorizing the Acupuncture Board to issue certificates to perform auricular acudetox therapy. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. The Committee on Government Organization moved to amend the bill by striking out everything after the enacting clause.
The senator from Senator from Nicholas County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we lay the bill over a day, retaining its place on the calendar.
The senator from Nicholas County requests unanimous consent that the bill lie over one day, retaining its place on the calendar. Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered.
Engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 2607 relating to the licensure of nursing homes. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Bill be advanced.
Engrossed House Bill 2666, supplemental appropriation to the Department of Veterans Assistance. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. The Committee on Finance moved to amend the bill on page 2.
The senator from Preston County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent to explain the amendments in lieu of having them read and that they all be considered as one.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Senator may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee proposed amendments for House Bill 2666 simply corrects two misnumbered lines so that they correctly correspond to the fiscal year 2019 budget bill as printed in the acts of the legislature. I urge adoption of the amendments.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion? Not. The question before the Senate is adoption of the committee amendment as explained by the senator from Preston County. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the committee amendment adopted. Are there further amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Bill be advanced.
Engrossed House Bill 2668, supplemental appropriation to Department of Administration Public Defender Services. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. The Committee on Finance moved to amend the bill on page 1, line
Senator
13.
from Preston County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Senator may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee proposed amendment for House Bill 2668 simply corrects a misnumbered line in the bill so that it correctly corresponds to the fiscal year 2019 state budget bill as printed in the acts of legislature. I urge adoption of the amendment.
Is there further discussion? Not. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the committee. Are there further amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not. The bill will be advanced. Further bills on second reading?
No, sir.
Bills on first reading. Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that all bills on first reading be considered read a first time and advanced to second reading.
Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered. Introduction of guest. Introduction of guest. Remarks by members of the Senate. The Junior Senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today in Putnam County, we had, sorry my mic's hung up there a little bit. Today in Putnam County, we had students and parents come into school. They got there without bus drivers, and the schools there were staffed, I'm told, with a little over half their staff today. And the ones that were not there, there was not enough there to prepare food, so we had principals fixing breakfast. I assume they're probably fixing lunch too. They'll be in school there all day. And I tell you, one of the things in being from Putnam County, as anywhere in West Virginia, we're in small communities, and you're not to see anybody you know, so you get to hear things directly and indirectly, and the rumor mills go, and especially when there's miscommunication, whether by intent or just by the nature of a rumor that goes through a community. So yesterday we had an amendment that if it would have been an order that was proposed that legislators would not make money from the education bill. I've been in favor of that. Because one of the rumors is, which is comical enough to me, is that Eric Tarr was going to start a charter school. So I got texts from friends with laughs and the LOL saying, "Are we starting a charter school now?" You know, and anybody that knows me that I'm not going to start a business that's not for profit. So in this bill, charter schools can only be started if they're nonprofit. I have no experience in nonprofit. I have no intention whatsoever of starting a charter school. Don't have an interest in being in that business. But what I do have a strong interest in, as apparently much of the staff in our schools in Putnam County and much of the parents in Putnam County, is having a school system that has an opportunity to grow to attract jobs to West Virginia and attract businesses to West Virginia so that we can grow the profit of our communities, grow paychecks, grow salaries, give people money to buy homes with. That's what education ultimately does. I want to applaud. I want to take this moment to sincerely and from the deep in my heart show the appreciation I have for that Putnam County community, keeping their schools open, honoring our children, and honoring our parents, and doing their job. So, Mr. President, thank you for the moment to speak.
Further remarks? Further remarks. The senator from Harrison County.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, we've had a tradition here, at least since the few years I've been here and under your leadership and that of President Cole, that, you know, once an issue passes, we try to let it go and move on to the next thing. And I wasn't going to stand today, but, you know, there's thousands of teachers in the hallways today who are educators and who, you know, life and education is education. And they're not here because they want a pay raise, and they're not here because they're not getting enough money. They're here because they think the bill we passed yesterday wasn't a good bill, and they don't think it is going to provide opportunities for our students or better wages for our students. And for that reason, they're here exercising their right of protest. Now, you may agree with them or disagree with them, but one thing I know is we're not educators. One thing I know is there's nobody in this room that has been an educator in the public school system the way those folks out in the hallway can and have. And I think we ought to take a good listen to those people that are out there and think about what we did yesterday. And I don't take the pride that some of the other members take in that bill, and certainly I want that said and in the record. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further remarks, the senator from Jefferson County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to, you know, they're correct that there are a lot of educators who are concerned, and I've spoken to several of them, also have been corresponding by email to many of them. I know that there's concern and fear based on things that the unions are saying, and I don't believe are necessarily accurate. And, you know, we can try to explain the truth. I took all the time that I could to explain the bill, to answer the questions, to put in provisions to protect our public schools. I want to just read one email, if I may, Mr. President. This is from a teacher who is not here. She emailed this morning and she asked me to please not reveal her name. I'm an 8th grade teacher in Kanawha County, and I just wanted to let you know that not all teachers are against Senate Bill 451. Are there parts of the bill I don't agree with? Yes. Are there parts I do agree with? Yes. Are my disagreements enough for me to strike? No. I feel that the union leaders are leading the teachers wrong. I know a lot of teachers are worried about how charter schools and ESAs are going to impact public schools, and I understand their concerns. It is a bit concerning as a public school teacher because we already have such low funding. I probably spend at least $1,000, if not more, of my own money every year in my classroom to make my students' education the best that I can. But I also know that charter schools can be a good thing. I feel like the unions are not willing to compromise. We teach our students to listen to all sides and to understand you can't always get your way. But I feel that the unions are not doing that. I just wanted to let you know that you are not alone. This teacher, I could not express myself as well as she did. And I want to say that I am more than willing to compromise. I believe that the amendment that we opposed and supported was a compromise, and it was conceding. There were things that they were concerned about that we took out. And I have to say that I'm very grateful, Mr. President, for the leadership that you have shown and the fact that we were able to courteously get the bills passed and are now going to continue with the work that we need to do in this state. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further remarks? Further remarks. The senator from Wood County.
Concede.
Junior Senator from 17th first.
Mr. President, I just want to share an article in one of the New York papers just today, actually. I won't read the entire thing, but I just want to highlight. In New York City's 5 boroughs, 60,000 black children and 43,000 Hispanic children were enrolled in charter schools last year. They're in those schools because their parents believe that charters are where they have the best chance at success. Both academic research and state testing data support their faith. Yet lawmakers in the now solidly Democratic state legislature are silent as the city approaches the day when charter school growth stops. Without legislative action, the cap on the number of charter schools could be reached by the end of this school year, and no applications for the creation of additional charters will be accepted. Meanwhile, Mayor de Blasio has implied the city has enough charter schools. His Honor and his fellow Democrats in Albany seem prepared to deny many thousands of other families the opportunity to make the same choices that have worked so well for so many New York students over the past 20 years. For as long as the state has allowed these schools to grow in number, families have flocked to them. Since 1999, when charter schools were first introduced, the number of students enrolled has skyrocketed to 123,000. Today, there are 48,000 more students enrolled in New York charter schools than there were only 5 years ago. These schools make big gains with low-income and minority children. On the annual state English and mathematics test, charter schools in the Big Apple outperform the average for all students in the rest of the state. For black and Hispanic students, this advantage is even more significant. Black students in New York City's charter schools outperform black students in the rest of the state by more than 26 percentage points in English. In math, 59% of black students in the city's charter schools score at a proficient or above, compared to only 25% of black students in all other schools in the state. Almost a third of black students in the city's charter schools score extremely proficient. The highest level on the test in math, only 8% of black students and 19% of all students score at that level in the rest of the schools in the state. New York City's charters are getting students to excel. It goes on to talk about similar results for Hispanic students. It goes on to talk about district funding, how there has been no damage to public school system and district funding. And that is because charter schools, as we have seen and discussed with multiple other states, operate at a much lower cost than public school systems. South Carolina, when I've talked to legislators and principals down there, the average cost for a child was about $8,500 per student. Surrounding students were in public school systems was operating at about $18,000 per student. Currently in West Virginia, we're operating at $14,000 per student. I just want to bring this out because this isn't a local issue. This is an issue going across the entire country. And what Senate Bill 451 is trying to do, because really, let's be honest, the two sticking points for the entire bill is charter schools, and they are successful, and they are operating, and they are helping children in 44 states across the country. The other one is the ESA, which this article does not address. However, again, we've tailored that down to 1,000 students for only special needs. I'd just like to share that with the body. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further remarks? Further remarks? The senator from Wood County seeks recognition.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm just going to take a few minutes here. I didn't say a whole lot during the whole education debate. I understand it's passed from the Senate at this point, but I just felt like in all the speeches, which there were many good ones, and on both sides had rigorous debate. But I think the fundamental issue with everything we're talking about today, Mr. President, the fundamental issue that we missed and we didn't really talk about is the issue of liberty and freedom. It wasn't our country founded on liberty and freedom? It was. I promise you it was. No provision in our Constitution ought to be dearer to man than that which protects the rights of conscience. Our rulers can have no authority over such natural rights, only as we have submitted to them. The rights of conscience we never submitted. It is inconsistent with the spirit of our laws and Constitution to force tender consciences. Thomas Jefferson. Government is instituted to protect property of every sort. Conscience is the most sacred of all property. James Madison. The rights of conscience and private judgment are by nature subject to no control but that of deity. And in that free situation they are now left. John Jay, the original Chief Justice. Consciences of men are not the subject of human legislation. The state does not have any concern in the matter, for in what manner doth it affect society? In what outward form we think it best to pay our adoration to God? William Livingston, signer of the Constitution. We all know the story, Mr. President. The opening battles of the Revolutionary War at Lexington and Concord, when Paul Revere made his midnight ride to warn the Reverend Jonas Clark and others that the British were coming. Lexington Green was actually the lawn of the church of the Reverend Jonas Clark. Jonas Clark said, "Well, I've trained them for this very hour." And on came the British, and our Minutemen fired away and retreated to Concord and set up and did greatly and did well and did wonderfully. Sam Adams said, "What a glorious morning is this. What a glorious morning is this." But what someone forgot to tell Samuel Adams was that your men have died today, and thousands more and millions more across the American history are about to die. But one thing that they're not about to die for is the right for a parent to send their kid where they want to send them. First 10 amendments to the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. The First Amendment, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. The Second Amendment, a well-regulated militia. The Third Amendment is quartering houses. The Fourth Amendment, all the way down to the 10th Amendment. And of course, we all know what the 11th Amendment is, and that is no parent shall send their student to a school that they want to send them to. That's called liberty. It's called freedom. What in God's name are we doing telling parents that they can't send their kids where they want to send them? The American Revolution, the Battle of Normandy, down across the ages. We've paid the price in blood, and are you going to tell me that we don't have the right to send our kids to the school we want to send them to? If we don't want to send our kids to a charter school, we're going to have legislation that says we can't send our kids to a charter school. If we don't want to take the money, public money to send our kids to a private school or a Christian school, and we're going to say the legislature is going to violate that religious conscience of ours, our founding fathers would say it's anathema. Our nation was founded, without a doubt, Mr. President, on liberty and freedom. Removing these two parts of this bill are fundamental to liberty. Fundamental to liberty. You take these out, it is a offense to liberty. I understand this out of here. It's in the House. But it's not over yet, of course. It's our job. We're debtor to our founding fathers to stand up for liberty and to stand up for freedom. If there's anything more fundamental to liberty and freedom, there is nothing more fundamental to liberty and freedom than that of giving parents the fundamental right to make a decision for the children. That is not the state's right. The state is supplanting more and more the rights of the parents to make decisions for their children, to be sovereign over their children. The state has no right to supplant that, to supplant that authority. By a rude bridge that arced the flood, their flag to April's breeze unfurled. Here once the embattled farmers stood and fired the shot heard round the world. The foe long since in silence slept, alike the conqueror silent sleeps. In time the ruined bridge has swept down the dark stream which seaward creeps. On this green bank, by this soft stream, we set today a votive stone, that memory made their deed redeem, when like our sires, our sons are gone. Spirit that made these heroes dare to die and leave their children free, bid time and nature gently spare the shaft we raised to them and thee. Our forefathers died for religious conscience, for the right of conscience, the right of to live out a freedom and liberty of conscience in a free nation. To not allow parents to make that decision for their children is a fundamental violation of that right. I hope we come to our senses and put these provisions, keep these provisions in the bill. They are fundamental to freedom. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further remarks. The senator from Braxton County.
Thank you, Mr. President. But we've heard some nice things today. You can get on your machine and you can find an article that will say anything you want it to say. You can take any position you want to about liberties and freedoms, but you know what I've found about most people that really talk about liberty and freedom? It's their type of liberty and freedom. If you disagree with what they think, then you're against liberty and freedom. Now look, the problem that we have here is, as legislators, we tried to put onto something that we don't know anything about. Isn't it funny that by the thousands our educators think this is bad? You know, I just wonder what would happen if the legislature started trying to legislate medical procedures. Well, they would think that we were crazy. We're not qualified for that. And what this all comes down to, let's just call it for what it is. Alex wanted the Republicans to push this, so they did. They're pushing it all around the country. Whether it's good, bad, or in between, that's what we've got here. But the problem is, in the midst of all of us bickering and carrying on, are we really worried about our children, or are we worried about our agenda? If this charter school is such a good thing, why would we not just use those same rules in all the schools? Why wouldn't we want to try to bring all the children? The senator talked about New York City. That's great for that 1/3. What about the rest of the kids in that school? No one seems to be talking about them.
No one seems to care about the kids that are going to be left behind. And how would you like to be a teacher in West Virginia today when all you hear is how bad it is? Well, let me just tell you something that I do know. I've got 3 kids. They all went through the school system in Braxton County from kindergarten on. They went on to college, first kids in our family to go to college. They all ended up with master's degrees. Now, if this education is so bad, how did this happen? But one thing I do want to close with in saying, we do have liberties and we do have freedoms. And it is our responsibility, but it's also our responsibility to respect the rights of other people to disagree with us. That's the most important thing. But for us to sit here and talk about how bad the teachers are and how bad this is and how bad it is, look, let's be honest. The problem we have in West Virginia today is parenting. And I don't know how we legislate parenting. Whenever a child can stand up and cuss a teacher and the teacher can't do anything about it, you bring the parents in, the parents want to jump on the teacher. That's our problem. But carving out a system where kids with good parents can send their children at the cost of everybody else, I don't see anything fair, and I certainly don't see the liberty to that. Thank you.
Further remarks? Further remarks? Junior Senator from the 17th. Miscellaneous business. Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that a leave of absence be granted to the senator from Monroe.
Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered. Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also request unanimous consent that the remarks by the junior senator from the 5th be printed in the appendix of the journal.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Senator from Marion County.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the remarks by the senator from Harrison and Braxton be printed in the appendix of the journal.
Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered. Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Pending announcements, I move the Senate stand adjourned until tomorrow at 11 a.m.
Are there announcements? Senior Senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Senate Finance Committee will meet today at 3 p.m. room 451M. The agenda has been posted.
Senator from Jefferson County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Senate Education Committee will meet at 2 o'clock today in room 451M. The agenda has been posted.
Senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on the Judiciary will meet today at 3 p.m. in 208 West Wing.
Senator from Nicholas County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Government Organization will meet this afternoon at 2 p.m., room 208 West, and again in the morning at 10 a.m., also in 208 West.
Senator from Marshall County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Health will meet today at 1 p.m. in Senate Finance.
Senator from Preston.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Agriculture and Rural Development will meet tomorrow, 2 p.m., 208 West.
Senator from Tucker County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Energy will meet today at 1 p.m. in 208 West, and the agenda has been posted.
The Senator from Wetzel County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure will meet at 9 a.m. tomorrow in 251M. We will continue the inspection bill and also take up the bill involving the highway construction.
The Senator from Jefferson County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I forgot to mention that at 5 o'clock today there is a LOSIA meeting in room 451M.
Further announcements? Further announced. The Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd just like to remind the body again, tomorrow we will be having our group picture at 9:30. So if all members can be present in the chamber at 9:30 for the group 84th Legislature picture.
Further announcements. Not the Senator from Harrison County.
Mr. President, I thought you were going to ask for introductions again, but I would request unanimous consent to revert to that order of business.
The Senator from Harrison County requests unanimous consent to return the 11th order of business for the purpose of an introduction. Is there objection? Chair hears none. Senator may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just thought it appropriate, since they chose the upper house instead of going over to the House of Delegates, that we welcome all of our West Virginia educators in the galleries today. Thank you for coming. Make them feel well.
Senate, please be in order. Further announcements or introductions? Further introductions. Miscellaneous business, further announcements. Are there further announcements? Not. Question before the Senate is, shall the Senate stand adjourned until tomorrow at 11 a.m.? All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the Senate adjourned until tomorrow at 11 a.m.